across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Yeah, welcome. It is the Home of Common Sense. Thank you to Julia Hartley-Brook. We are rammed to the gills this evening, or this afternoon even. Labour failing young Brits. What about this? 60% of young Brits fear they won't find good jobs as Rachel Reeves's job tax bites. Keir Starmer's tax chaos adds to the crisis, with warnings of hikes in income tax and soaring unemployment under Labour's mismanagement. There's a whole load to get into on this one. What advice do you have for Reeves and Rayner? We'll look at that in more detail in just a moment. Also this afternoon, President Trump may meet President Putin as early as next week as ceasefire talks progress. Meanwhile, he's imposing tough tariffs on India and on foreign semiconductors. This is all to boost US manufacturing. Stakes, of course, are rising once again as Trump pushes for peace and attempts to force Russia to bend. But will Putin blink? We'll have more on that as it progresses. And this is a belter, isn't it? Labour's homelessness minister, Rushanara Ali, faces a backlash for evicting tenants and then hiking up the rent by 700 quid in her townhouse while championing the Renters' Rights Bill. Critics have slammed Ali's hypocrisy as Labour pushes reforms to ban unfair evictions and rent increases. You can't make this up. Everything you need to know, and of course all the breaking news right here on Talk. We've got loads to get through, and of course the crucial factor is your input. 0344 499 1000. Does anyone feel better off out there, by the way? I think it's a reasonable question. It would be nice at some point just to speak to somebody who says, do you know, I genuinely feel better off. Yeah, life's good. Life's much better than it was a couple of years ago. I can't imagine anyone like that actually exists, no matter what your income bracket happens to be. Now, yesterday we talked about our levels of sheer debt in this country. It's eye-watering stuff all round, and the Chancellor is trying to fill a 50 billion quid black hole, the kind of money that could rebuild a small country. Today, we get some sort of peek into the inner workings of the collective minds of Reeves and Rayner. And it ain't pretty. Yet again, the tax man is coming for you. Households across the country, particularly in wealthy areas, could be hit with huge council tax rises under Rayner's plans to divert more funding from deprived regions. Experts warned, however, there are issues with this. Reforms being brought in by the Deputy PM will mean many councils in areas, particularly the south, not exclusively, and London, and the home counties face swinging cuts to their core budgets, according to this report by the Institute of Fiscal Studies, which suggests, and it does get rather interesting, that changes will see around a quarter of councils in England alone lose money in real terms. Now, the problem with the winners and the losers thing is that it means the strength of the cuts in wealthy areas will have huge implications on other services. And those services, of course, don't just affect wealthy people. So there's an issue on that one. It could be your bin collection, elderly care, you name it. Even if the increases bills by the maximum amount allowed, it would still cause an issue. There is a very simple truth in life. I just said it to Julia. It's not even an opinion. It's just an economic fact. You cannot tax a country into prosperity. You just can't do it. It doesn't work. It will never work. It's anti-intellectual. It's like trying to get two opposite poles to attract. It ain't gonna happen. And over there in the tax office, where they're too busy organising anti-British staff seminars to notice any of this. More on that shortly, by the way. But the real crime here, in many ways, is this. Governments are not just here to paper over a few cracks, to make a short-term plan, I don't know, for the coming months or year ahead. They have a moral obligation to set the scene for the next generation. It's literally their job to sow the seeds of prosperity and ensure that the economic terrain of our country is in good shape for years to come. But today we see that Labour's taxation policies are in fact crushing the UK labour market and setting young people up for failure. And as I said a moment ago, 60% of Britain's youngest workers fear finding well-paid jobs will be harder. That means getting on the property ladder near on impossible. Many people just resign to the why bother mantra. It reflects widespread anxiety under Labour's economic plans. So with all of that in mind, you've got literally everybody getting hit here. Left, right and flipping centre. What advice do you have for Reeves and Rayner? 0344 499 1000. And one of the, I'd love to get a bit of a list going of areas that we could, and maybe we'll read this out at the end, a collation of your suggestions, what advice you have for the Chancellor and the Deputy Prime Minister. Oh, there you go. That's my phone going. Sorry about that. Halfords. What advice do you have for the Deputy Prime Minister and for the Chancellor of the Exchequer? Very simply, these are the two people that are really behind what we're talking about here. Rayner is determined to get the council tax. She just thinks a bit like the landlord thing. You know, if you live there, you're all well off. If you're a landlord, you're all well off. We can just tax the pants off you lot, and that makes her feel better. She will sleep better at night knowing that people who've worked hard and have got a little bit more than someone else, it might only be a little bit more, by the way, they are the very people that we can go for those people with impunity. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we attack that group of people. It's absolutely fine because we're punching up, as it were. And then with this just incredibly misplaced, bonkers belief that everything will come out rosy. In the, look what we did. We taxed all the people with a few more quid. Fantastic. Yeah, what about the kids at the other end who might only be sort of 13, 14 now, but by the time you leave office, Angela Rayner, they're going to be 17 and 18. They're going to be in the workplace. They're going to be looking for a stable economy to function in, an area where they can do well. That sense of, I live in the land of plenty, a place where I can thrive, where I can grow, where I can increase my possibilities. And whether that's financial or otherwise, it's a good place to be, a nice feel. Not quite milk and honey, but you take the point. 0344 499 1000. What advice do you have for Reeves and Rayner? Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Liam Deacon is with us, former head of press over there at the Brexit Party. Liam, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Great to be here.
And lovely to have you with us. This is classic Labour territory, of course, the jobs tax. We've seen that with the national insurance rise, spearheaded by Rachel Reeves. And it's crushing, if you like, the UK labour market. There's issues in this. People have cut jobs back, setting young people up for failure. 60% of Brits fear finding well-paid jobs will be harder. And this, of course, reflects a huge anxiety over there in the economy. Let's have a listen, just before we kick off, Liam, to the Chancellor's comments about taxation since Labour gained power. Here she is.
I'm really clear. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. And at this budget, we did wipe the slate clean.
That is actually how she speaks, by the way. That's not a technical glitch. But nonetheless, you got it there, Liam. I mean, everything's good, everything's hunky-dory in the world of Rachel and Angela. They don't seem to really see the problem. They're in full control. What are you making of this?
Well, let's start with the positive, shall we? Because there isn't many. You started by talking about council tax, and so few young people actually own a house that probably won't impact many of them.
That's a very good point. Yeah,
yeah,
you're slightly armour-plated on that one in many respects.
You know, so there's your silver lining. We'll start with that. But, I mean, this is a great bit of polling. It's by the Adam Smith Institute, who've only just moved into doing this kind of research, and they're really making a splash. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Max Marlow and the team there, because it's important that people ask these questions, because every time we talk about this exodus of young people, Nigel Farage has spoken about it and stuff, there's always inevitably some commentators that come back saying, you're making that up, what are you saying? And, you know, part of this is completely obvious, but actually these are the questions that need to be asked. We need the evidence, and here it is, right in front of us. 60% feel utterly pessimistic about finding a well-paid, satisfying job. Okay, and you know, that's not an isolated phenomenon. We've just had the debate around PIP and welfare and stuff. And if people aren't getting ahead, finding good jobs, you know, the motivation to work hard and get on falls, and more people end up on welfare and things like PIP. So there's that. Only 14% said they expect no change ahead of the next general election, but just 1 in 4 said they were optimistic about things improving over the next 4 years. So, you know, it goes back to that sort of Reaganite aphorism that it's the economy, stupid, and the economy is utterly failing people right now. I mean, you know, the question is, what could Labour do? They said they wouldn't put tax on working people.
Yep.
They fiddled that. They put this jobs tax on, and that does filter down. That leads to lower wages, and it is effectively a tax on people. So they fiddled that, but they're claiming they haven't put tax on. So what could they do? You ask the question. I mean, a lot of Tories have said this. A lot of reform people are saying this. You need something called supply side reform. Now, that's a bit of an abstract term. What does that mean? It's really simple. It's really simple. It means making it easier to produce things and do things. OK? That's what the government do. They need to make it easier for us to go out, start companies, make money, okay, and generate growth, okay? And you just look at the conditions that successive governments have created in this country. We have the most expensive industrial electricity in the developed world. We have some of the most restrictive planning laws in the developed world. We have crippling house prices that particularly impacts young people, okay? Immigration is running at near enough 1 million a year, okay, despite promises to do the opposite. Okay, for years they told us that that would boost the economy, but suddenly, just this week, you've had a senior member of the OBR coming out and saying, actually, bringing in low-paid workers, that costs the economy overall much more because they're dependents and they claim benefits and things like that. So you've got that, and then you've got other things like, you know, so these are things that you can do to get people out there. Okay, we need to build infrastructure. Okay, and we need to make that cheaper. We need, and Richard Tice made this point when he made a comment responding to this poll. He said we need cheaper energy, and you might think, well, that's a bit of a leap. We're talking about, you know, people getting jobs, but you know, energy is the sort of it's almost obvious is the power that gets, you know, industry moving. Okay, you can't have factories and stuff. I was talking to someone who works for a laptop company the other day. I can't say who, but they've had discussions with the Chancellor because they're building all their laptops out in places like Hungary. And the Chancellor's saying, well, you know, we could have a much better relationship if you built some laptops in the UK. It's a complete non-starter. They can't open a factory in the UK because it would put the cost of those laptops up so much. So all those jobs, high-paid jobs in industry, just disappear. You've seen Vauxhall get rid of jobs. You've seen major factories closing. Okay, all this rubbish about the green industrial revolution, it's a fantasy. That phrase really annoys me because we've seen the absolute opposite of an industrial revolution happen ever since we pursued these green policies. So all of these things are not abstract. They're not far. They're not distant from this core reality that young people, the future of this country, feel neglected. Now, also, a lot of your viewers are going to be older people. They're going to be people with pensions. They're going to be people that are very focused on that side of things. And you might think, well, you know, we've got it hard too. There's lots of talk now about taxing pensions and things like that. But what older viewers need to understand is their state pension isn't held in some gold-plated pot somewhere. Their state pension is paid by young people working today. Okay, so the taxes that young people like me pay your pension directly in the near term. Okay, and if we have fewer young people in high-paid jobs paying taxes, pensions suffer as well. So this is a thing that the whole of society needs to care about. And that filters down as well. If young people aren't making money and not living in houses, they're not having children. And then the future, the very future of this country begins to look uncertain.
100%. I mean, this isn't, you know, it's not rocket science. This is the most sort of bamboozling part of all of this when you look at it, Liam, is that, you know, a sort of A-level student of economics could work this out. In fact, maybe not even somebody studying economics could sort of work out that this is going dramatically in the wrong direction. And it is about not just building and securing where we are now, but it's also their job to create the environment for the future. And I can't say, in 5 years' time, I shudder to think where our economy might be under this lot.
Yeah. Let me give you an example. So the Labour sort of bet the farm on getting growth going, okay? They said that the way to solve the economic woes that we've been suffering under for decades is to get growth going. You know, we've been flat growth pretty much my entire life since 2008, right? And they said we're going to get growth going, and that means we won't need to tax people because the economy will be bigger and we'll be getting more taxes naturally, okay? And I remember thinking, like, so what are they actually going to do? What are they going to do to get growth going? Because they don't want to, you know, they've basically banned fossil fuels. They're putting up regulation, all the things that businesses need to get growth going. And the one thing that looked a bit promising was planning. Okay, so they were going to drive through a little bit of planning thing. You know, part of that I think was actually quite negative. They wanted to concrete over parts of our countryside and things like that. But part of it was quite good. You need to build factories. You need to build data centers.
Yeah.
It can take 10 years to build a data center in this country.
100%.
And then they put it through Parliament, they watered it all down, and all of the environmental protections and things that stop factories and railways and roads and tramways being built suddenly looked uncertain again because one newt or one butterfly or one bat. And here's the example, okay? So, you know, do you remember the story about the £100 million bat tunnel that we're being forced
the
to
bat
build?
tunnel, crucial
Okay.
infrastructure, of course.
So the Labour government, senior members of the Labour government, called that bat tunnel beep, 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 bat beep, 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 crazy. I won't say that word on air, but they called it bat something crazy. Okay, so the senior members of the government said we're wasting £100 million, but that law's still there.
Yeah.
We're still building this bat tunnel. The government is in power but powerless. We're spending £100 million building something because of a bit of regulation that the opposition, the government, and most people in the press and the media and commentators think is crazy, and we're still building it.
Yeah, I mean, we love a bat. I love a bat like anybody else, but not 100 million quid's worth of protection. Listen, stay with us, Liam. We're going to come back with more stories. We'll talk about that. Is it a big success for the new one-in, one-out policy as that started to take hold this morning? We'll talk a bit on MasterChef as well, and that prison panic down there at Brixton, where some half-wit took the keys home with him. Oh, dear. We'll have more on that and more coming up. 0344 499 1000. Drop us a voice note on this as well. The question, what advice do you have for Reeves and Rayner? If you want to bypass the queue and get your comment straight on air, 0344 499 1000. You can voice note us on that number. You can message 87222.
During my video that you saw where they was dressed up, we discussed consent. We discussed how to choke properly, how to slap properly.
How to choke. See, when you're having conversations about how to choke properly.
But if I'm not doing that, all those people are going to watch online is a video where they've seen a girl get really roughly choked and it's not been discussed at all. So if that guy then does it to another girl who's freshly 18, how is he not going to hurt her? How does she know to speak up? So I am doing good for society, because if I wasn't doing these sex tapes that show more of the educational side, I mean, the parents aren't teaching them.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Here's one. Good afternoon, Mr. Collins. It's Marco from Halfords. We were just calling to let you know your Lycra outfit is ready to collect. I'll be there around about 6-ish, if that's all right, Marco. Thank you. Steve in Wales says, one thing is for sure, Richard III, aka Rachel Reeves, will never, ever fit into the £50 billion black hole, the entire universe. Yes, Reeves' ego. No. Got it, Steve. Thank you for that. One in from Margaret, who says, Rachel and your £50 billion black hole. Simple solution, stop paying £8 billion to people invading the country. Brian answering our question. My advice for the pair of them, very simple, resign. I think few people feeling exactly the same way on that one. We've got Liam Deacon with us, former head of press at the Brexit Party. Great to have you with us again, Liam. Let's look at this story then. It's Labour's migrant deal with France. It's sort of falling apart already because the dinghies are still coming over in large numbers, although they did begin today, apparently. They detained the first migrants, 3 blokes and an Eritrean cockapoo, apparently, but that's all we know so far. But let's have a reminder of what Keir Starmer promised when talking about his deal with Mr. Macron.
For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal, subject to strict security checks and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally. This will show others trying to make the same journey that it will be in vain and that jobs they've been promised in the UK will no longer exist because of the nationwide crackdown we're delivering on illegal working, which is on a completely unprecedented scale.
So that's what he promised, Liam. The boats continued, and this week when that policy kicked in, I think it was on Tuesday, the boats still continue. About 800 people every week come to this country in small boats on average. Today, however, the first migrants detained for potential deportation under this deal. We don't know any details about numbers, etc. But I would say don't hold your breath on that one.
You know, I share your scepticism about whether or not this will have a broader impact, and we can get into that later about, you know, the scale and the ambition of this thing. But I will cut Keir a slight break here because I do think it's important that it is established in principle that this is possible. Now, for years, we've heard from people that, you know, essentially don't want to stop the migrant crisis, and the French in particular, that some French ministers have basically implied that it's impossible. The framework doesn't exist to return people across the channel because it's the obvious solution. If you come here, you get returned, and it completely in an instant removes the incentives to cross the channel. OK, and if we did that for just 2 weeks, it would completely stop. Lives would be saved. Hundreds of millions of pounds of police and border force money would be saved. You know, stability would return to parts of northern France and southern England. We could fix it in a moment with just a couple of flights back over across the channel. But they've always said that can't happen. And they always sort of prevaricate and they say, oh, it's, you know, we just can't quite do it. It's something to do with Brexit. We upset the French and the fact that they're going to do it, they are going to actually detain some people and return them across the channel, shows that a framework is possible. And it shows that there is a choice. We are making a choice to continue this crisis, this deadly, inhumane crisis. It is a political choice by the French and British authorities who don't have the will to end it. OK, it shows that Brexit didn't make this possible. And it shows that, you know, that maybe the French chose not to do it with the Boris Johnson government because they politically wanted to make a point about Brexit. But that's a political choice. And those people should be held accountable, therefore, for the people that die in the channel. OK, they chose to carry this crisis on and they should be held accountable for that. So I think I want to see it established in principle. And then actually, people like you and I who want to see this crisis actually end can make the argument, right, you've done it for 50 people a week. Why don't we return them all? And then there's no corner that they can stand in and say it's impossible, we can't do it. And the deaths will continue, the crossings will continue, because this is a small number, and they will have to explain themselves. They will have to explain themselves, because I think really, people that are worried about this need to actually take the moral high ground here, okay? Because so often we're called uncaring. So often people that want to see the migrant crisis end, it's implied in it that we just don't like people from foreign countries and we just don't like migrants, which is ridiculous. Actually, we are on the moral high ground here, okay? For years, human rights lawyers have created a sort of a spider web of bits of legislation and loopholes that have continued this situation where you have hundreds of thousands of people living in shanty towns in France, okay, and crossing one of the busiest shipping lanes in the earth. Children have drowned, men have drowned. It's utterly insane. Okay, and I think we actually need to stand up and say we're on the moral side here. If you want people, more people to come to the UK from the countries that they're coming from across the Channel, get elected to Parliament and make the case to the British people. Okay, do the right thing. Say, to be honest with the British public. Say, I want, you know, tens of thousands of more people to come here from Afghanistan, and I'm going to make the case to the British people, and I believe in this, and I think they'll support me. Don't play dirty and use bits of human rights law that were never intended to.
And we are going to be seeing, and even with this current policy, I think we're still going to be seeing that. That's, you know, we're watching the next few weeks how this one pans out. Let's move to this story. We are short of time, Liam. Prison panic in Brixton, who were on a 2-week lockdown after a blundering guard took the keys home for 6 days. Now, there's a lot of errors we can all make in the workplace, but taking the keys home to a jail is probably right up there.
It's a pretty big one, isn't it? I mean, I'm the sort of bloke who has lost many sets of keys over his lifetime. You just need to ask my wife about that. So my first instinct is I do feel a little bit sorry for this blundering bloke or woman who's done this. But yeah, no, it's extraordinary, and it's cost millions of pounds to change all these locks. And you would think that keeping things secure is pretty high up on your priority list.
You might think so.
In a prison.
And of course, once a set of keys, we were talking about this in the office. You know, if you see an image on TV of a prison officer, they will often pixelate the keys so that you can't, you know, there's no way, you know, they don't want to be seen in case somebody is clever enough to focus in and are able to copy it. So the minute they go out of the prison grounds, that's game over. And so millions of pounds to change that, to keep prisoners on a kind of almost like a restricted movements during this time. I don't know what's happened to the officer, but I would have thought that in that world, that's as big an error as you could. I mean, that's got to be, you know, don't want anybody to lose their job, frankly. But you might think 6 days. Did he not notice? He had the keys to the C-wing hanging off his jeans.
You'd hope he gets held accountable. And I will say this, I actually used to live in Brixton. I actually once looked round a flat where the rear balcony overlooked the prison, and you could literally stand in this block of flats and look into the prison. And I think what radio viewers won't understand is this prison is in the middle of South London, one of the most populated bits of the country. Okay, this will actually be quite scary for residents. Okay, it really is a busy bit of London with a huge prison right smack bang in the middle of it. And we can ask questions about why it's there and how sensible it is and why we still have Victorian prisons there. True. But it's quite alarming for everyday people. And it's a good bit of journalism that talk have exposed this.
Absolutely. Is it any coincidence 17 Timpsons opened in the meantime? Is there any connection to that? I don't know. Listen, Liam, great to have you on. Thank you. We will speak again very soon. That's Liam Deacon, great voice on the big issues of the day. He's former head of press of the Brexit Party. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000. You can voice note us on that number. The question we began with, what advice do you have for Reeves and Rayner? And of course, all the other stories that are up there as well. You're welcome to chip in on those too. We've got a great panel of voices coming up on that economic question, left, right and somewhere in between in a couple of moments' time. It's 1:30. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Says, am I alone? I actually think the government are doing an OK job against a horrendous set of circumstances. They've only been there for a little over a year. Let's see where we are in a year's time. Some would say that's a very generous assessment. Mark says, advice for Reeves and Rayner, do one and take Keir Starmer with you. It's a mixed bag of opinions on this one. What advice do you have for Reeves and Rayner? Council tax rising? By the looks of things, we've got workers, employers' national insurance, which kicked in. And, of course, the jobs market looking a little precarious, potentially. Your thoughts on all of that as we move into the territory where a poll says 60% of young Britons fear difficulty finding jobs against what is happening at the moment. And Starmer's refusal to rule out tax hikes has sort of added to the criticism of Labour's economic management. Lots of voices to come on this. We're going to speak to Issy Waite, National and International Secretary of Labour Students, also Maxwell Harrison, a Reform UK Kent County councillor. First, Michael Simmons, the economics editor at The Spectator. Good afternoon to you, Michael.
Good afternoon.
I said at the beginning, a very basic rule of economics, you can't tax your way into prosperity. Does that still stand?
Yeah, I think this is absolutely right. And this just shows kind of the doom loop that we're stuck in now. We're in this position where we've spent so much, we're spending so much, debt is so high that Rachel Reeves has this fiscal hole that every week a new report seems to come out saying it's even bigger. It's now apparently £50 billion. And she's going to be faced, frankly, with no choice because she doesn't want to cut the size of the state. She's going to have to hike taxes in the autumn. But part of the reason why the hole has got so big is because the country is just not growing and growth forecasts get downgraded and it adds more to what she's got to find. But by putting up these taxes, you make it harder for businesses to grow. You reported on those jobs figures just there, and businesses are not taking people on. They're not taking on more work. The economy is not growing. The tax take comes down. And then yet again, we get to another budget and taxes have to go up. So the cycle just repeats itself.
Labour may well say, well, had the Tories won the last election, it wouldn't look much different, to be honest. It was already going in that direction. Do you concur with that?
Well, look, I've got some sympathy with that view. I don't think the last government left the economy in a particularly good state. I don't think the Tories then sort of had the policies to really reform the economy that it desperately needs. That said, I do think Labour have done things that just objectively have made it much worse. We've had the Bank of England today saying that increased employment costs are contributing to inflation that the bank now thinks will hit 4%. And if we read between the lines there, what they mean is basically the £25 billion raid on national insurance employers' contributions, which has just made it more and more expensive to hire people. So that's now stagnating the growth for reasons we just said, but also it's being passed on to consumers and making things more expensive.
What are the options? If she was sitting here now, Rachel Reeves, maybe along with Angela Rayner, because this does fall into her territory too in terms of things like council tax. What advice would you be giving them, Michael? Is there a kind of, there might not be a silver bullet, but there must be a few nuggets that could be thrown into the pot that would improve things?
Well, she's in a tricky position because she said she doesn't want to break Labour's manifesto and increase the big free taxes. Her backbenchers are not going to wear serious cuts. There's little things that she might be able to do to get her through this autumn, such as continuing the freeze on thresholds for when you start to pay income tax and when you go into higher brackets. That could get her something like £10 billion. She could tighten up, there's talks of sin taxes. She could tighten up some bits in inheritance tax that probably will fill this black hole. But when we get to the spring budget or get to the autumn budget next year, I think eventually you do run out of options, at which point whoever the Chancellor is going to have to make a major decision, which is do taxes, and by taxes I mean serious taxes, income tax, VAT, Do they go up across the board, or do you do the other option, which is seriously start to look at shrinking the size of the state?
Or could she come to the dispatch box, and I've never really seen a politician do this, and say, do you know what, we did make a promise that throughout this parliament we're not going to raise income tax, national insurance and VAT. However, look, times are tough, we've gone back to the room, had a little look, and we are going to have to break our own rule. Could you envisage that?
I think it's politically unlikely. She's going to do everything she can to avoid that. But if the numbers really are as bad as they currently look, she might be left with little choice. I do think if that's ever on the cards, it does make sense to do it now, rather than, in 3 years' time when an election is a lot more, is a lot more in a clear-eyed view. You could do something really horrible on tax now, hopefully try and fix a bit of our economic situation, get the country in a better position, and then close to election say, oh, now I can do tax cuts. But I don't think Rachel Reeves has got the backing or really the will to do that. So I think it's unlikely.
Yeah, me too. Michael, thank you for your time, sir. Really appreciate that. Michael Simmons is economics editor over there at The Spectator. Let's speak with Maxwell Harrison, Kent County Council Reform Councillor. Maxwell, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you?
I'm very good. You sort of fall into two cramps here. You're young, so therefore you're potentially part of that poll that says young Britons expect the terrain to look pretty tricky in the years to come. But you're also a Reform UK politician, so I would imagine you would have some fairly robust advice for Reeves and Rayner.
Yeah, well, my advice to Reeves and Rayner is resign. That's my first advice to them. In terms of the outlay for young people, yes, it's dire. I mean, 28% of young people now are seriously considering leaving the country due to its lack of growth, to its lack of opportunity. If you take, for example, now 625,000 young people are unemployed, which means that unemployment now for young people is at 14.3%. It is a catastrophe. And I understand the sympathies of many young people, many of whom I speak to as friends, whether residents here on the Isle of Sheppey. Why remain in Britain? Seriously, why? The NHS doesn't work, the schools are full, can't get a house. Why would you want a family here? So it is actually quite a serious and significant problem. And if we don't actually have some sort of economic rejuvenation, this will simply get worse and worse until we eventually, in my view, have to head to the IMF.
But well, there is that speculation, of course. What can she actually do, bearing in mind she's put herself into this fiscal cul-de-sac of no tax rises when it comes to income tax, VAT or national insurance, although we can argue the case of employers' national insurance. But nonetheless, broadly, that is the promise, that's immovable. They're not going to change it unless they rework the term working people, which of course was always the kind of caveat whenever that no taxes on working people. Do you think that's the area she's going to go for?
I think from what I've heard thus far, I think the term working people, whoever those people are, the hard-working Britons who wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, who already can't afford their food or their heating bills, I think they're going to get hit hard come this autumn budget. I mean, taxes, I think, will go up. I think it will be income tax. I think it will be a political suicide in many respects. But again, what can they do? They're trying to play around with the same big state. I understand struggles at local government. Most councils are bankrupt. In Kent County Council, we inherited £740 million in debt. Yeah. It's very tough to make decisions. I completely understand that. And I do actually have, as did the previous guest beforehand, I understand the point that they raise, that they did inherit 14 years of calamity from the Tories. However, that being said, rather than growing the state, rather than supporting it, cut it by 50 or 25%. I mean, I would be as harsh to say, reduce it by 50%. Admit that some of your left-leaning policies on net zero, on mass uncontrolled illegal immigration, if you just put your hands up, say, this is costing us billions, rather than actually trying to put those costs onto the British people, we're going to gut them and cut them. If actually Labour said, no, we will just deport those who shouldn't be here, if they said, right, we're not going to commit ourselves to £830 billion between now and 2050 for net zero, I think people would have a lot of sympathy. Instead, they raised national insurance last year to 15%. Now 50% of businesses in the UK are looking at accruing those costs onto consumers, hence inflation will go up. And of course, 20% of businesses now in the UK are looking at reducing their investment. So it is, as your last guest said, a death spiral. It will only get worse and worse. And if Labour continue on this trajectory of not listening, make sure that we have no growth, Already we've lost 6,000 businesses in agriculture, fisheries and forestry. Since last October, the situation will get worse and worse.
Maxwell, thank you for your time, sir. Maxwell Harrison, Reform UK Kent County Councillor. Let's get a word from Issy Waite, National and International Secretary of Labour Students. Afternoon to you, Issy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Is it a miserable old time to be a socialist?
Look, I mean, I think we've all been through difficult periods before. As a young activist, I think it's a really important time to be involved. I did campaign for this Labour government, and I'm very supportive of this Labour government and the action that they are taking to protect young people and young workers just like
What
me.
are they doing, though? Because that seems to be at the heart of some of this, that 60% of young people thinking, you know, they're going to struggle to find a job. They're not enthusiastic. I mean, the housing market is just a very, very distant thought, not even on the horizon. It's in another stratosphere almost.
Yeah, I mean, these are problems that my generation are absolutely facing, and we have been facing, I would say, now for the past couple of decades. It's something that I'm acutely aware of, having worked in the hospitality industry, so I've seen it from that angle, but also seeing it from the angle of a recent university graduate. I went through the job search myself, and I've seen my friends also go through it and have really difficult experiences. I do think that there is a lot of really positive action that this government has taken, and what I would really point to is the Employment Rights Bill. And this is something that is really personal for me, because when I was working in hospitality, didn't have a lot of this legislation. And so with things like exploitative 0 hours contracts, I mean, a lot of young people are on these very exploitative contracts and are being disproportionately affected just by a complete lack of rights in the workplace. We've also seen the discriminatory age bans. That's something that I think is highly unfair, that you're paid a lower wage just for doing the exact same job because you are, in my case, I was a few months younger than one of my friends who was paid a considerably higher wage for that. So I think there are huge positives in what the government is doing. And I think, for me, the biggest difference is that we do have a government that is on our side, is on the side of workers, of young people.
Do you feel that? Do you sense that in the heart of Angela Rayner, Rachel Reeves and these sort of big players on the front bench, that they have your back, as it were?
I strongly believe that, absolutely. And I think a really big part of that is acknowledging that there are huge barriers to getting young people into employment. And it's about removing those barriers, whether that's on the side of education, whether that's mental health. But one thing I would also point towards, and this is something that I've always really strongly believed, is that we do push people into taking the same path. So we push too many young people to go into university, even if that isn't the right path for them. So what I would definitely call for
on that,
is a more of a deep dive into how we can actually present opportunity. And there are opportunities in terms of vocational pathways and skills training, but it's about how we can show young people that there are alternative options. And that begins with careers training in secondary schools. It begins with telling people in year 8 what their possible options are. For me, it always felt as though when you graduate from secondary school, you go to university. And I've seen my peers also go on that same path, but that hasn't worked out for everyone.
Yeah, I could talk on that particular point. I could talk forever on that, because I also feel very strongly on that. And schools pretend, they say, oh, no, we do offer, we do tell kids there's another option. They don't really, do they? Because they quite like the Ofsted report that tells them that 90% of our kids went on to XYZ university. And that's frankly criminal, that they don't say, look, there's nothing wrong with going vocational, whether you want to be a bricklayer, whether you want to work in a hairdresser's, whether you want to work as a tool maker. There's a famous son of a tool maker that became Prime Minister, of course.
That's what they say. We need to celebrate those alternative pathways as well. I mean, they shouldn't be seen as like an alternative. It should be more normalised and more celebrated.
Is there a danger, and I just ask this really as you're a Labour supporter and you campaign for Labour, and that's, we're not North Korea, you can campaign for who you like, but this hasn't been a very good start for this government, even notwithstanding what they inherited, and we all know that was also a bit rubbish, but the popularity of this government, or the lack of popularity, has never really been seen in peacetime. I mean, they're in a horrendous place at the moment. Are you not sort of thinking to yourself, well, I'm a bit of a lefty, but those reform guys are looking pretty tasty at the moment. Maybe I'll cross over the fence?
Absolutely not. I mean, I see through what reform are saying. They are they have correctly tuned into what a lot of people see, that things aren't working. Absolutely, I would agree with a lot of that. But I do think that, I mean, where's their record? What do they have to show for it? If you look at their individual policies, I have serious doubts as to how they're going to finance a lot of their plans. And to be honest, they're making these big promises, especially around immigration, that I just don't think they're going to be able to deliver on.
You could become a Tory, of course. Kemi Badenoch needs all the friends she can get at the moment.
Well, I ran against Kemi Badenoch in the general election, so I don't think I'd be joining her party anytime
Well,
soon.
I don't know. She might invite you in. Who knows? Listen, Issy, great to have you on. Thank you. Issy Waite is National International Secretary of Labour Students. And her assessment, I don't think I'm overstating it, is that actually she thinks this government are doing rather well. Now, we can say, are you blind? Are you mad? And all that kind of stuff, whatever way you want to take it. But clearly they won an election and there are still Labour supporters who think they're doing all right. It's hard to believe when you look at the stats of businesses closing and, as Maxwell Harrison just mentioned, youth unemployment that's at, 14% or something horrendous like that. Small businesses absolutely struggling, impossibility of getting on the housing ladder. None of this, not all of this, of course, was the creation of the Labour Party, but they are now the government. It is literally their job to create the environment and the circumstances where things can thrive, they can grow, and you can leave school, get on with life, or wherever you're at in your career or age bracket, you can go, I'm living in the right place. I'm living in a really good place, a land of great opportunity where the chances of things growing and doing better are clearly tangible and visible by the day. That's the country you want to live in. And by the way, you know, here we are in the year 2025. That should be a given by now, right? That should be a given. 0344 499 1000. What advice do you have for Reeves and Rayner? Our lines are open. This is Talk.
You think that you're, in a way, you're using the men, not them using you?
I mean, I always say, like, to the men, look, honestly, use me, rearrange my insides and all of that.
Yeah,
but
every time you say that phrase, I kind of recoil. Why?
Yeah.
What does that, what, I mean...
It's just like...
You're basically saying, I mean, you say to men, and you've said in videos, you know, strangle me, you know, slap me, spit on me.
God, you sound like you're about to start one of my videos.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be making the same money as you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Straight to your comments. Let's get a voice note from Scott in Birmingham.
Just to say, Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, all liars. I now have a summons for council tax for non-payment simply because I can't afford the extra £80 a month that they now think I'm going to be able to find. It's absolutely strangling me to death. Mentally, I'm a mess. It's just a nightmare. All these promises of no increases, it's just continuous lies. The whole lot need to go.
Yeah, and remember that. No, we will not increase council tax. That was absolutely explicit, along with, winter fuel payments and all the other nonsense that was promised and never came to, in fact, not just didn't come to fruition. A complete backtrack, complete lie in some respects. There's loads of evidence of Keir Starmer saying we will not increase council taxes. None of that caper. George is in Dundee. What's going on, George? Good afternoon to you.
Nice to speak to you again, Ian.
You too.
Just 2 points again, as usual. Reeves and Rayner, when instead of the opposition getting up and asking questions, they should all just stand up and start chanting, "You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing."
Yeah.
Great TV, gets the point across, and ridicule is the best way to treat these people. The other point is, Ian, I feel incredibly fortunate, and I'll tell you why. I left school in 1984, which was probably the very peak of unemployment. I think it was either 83 or 84, but I left school in 84 and was a YTS, £25 a week.
Yeah, I remember that.
But I knew then that there was still opportunity. There was still opportunity to get up the ladder, get earning money. By the age of 22, I was a higher rate taxpayer and stayed a higher rate taxpayer until I retired when I was 46. Now, what hope is there? What hope is there for any of our young people aspiring? And during that time, I bought and paid for a house and a property that I still own. What hope is there for our young people now? There is none. When they see people getting handed stuff for nothing, they then think, do I go the route of just putting my hand out and getting handed things?
Yeah, you see, that is it, and that's now. It's that was once upon a time people would reach for that example and they'd be shouted down as being a mad racist. As we're all familiar with that kind of technique. Now, of course, people who previously maybe didn't even engage in these kind of conversations are really seeing this. They're looking and going, hang on a second, how does this work? You've got a fella over there, he's got more than I've got. And all he did was row across the channel. And whatever the rights and wrongs or the circumstances of an individual, let's just assume they're a completely decent person that rowed across the channel. Even if that were the case, none of that makes it right. It still leaves us with this extraordinary, more than uncomfortable criminal situation where people who have worked hard cannot better their lives. And our previous voice note from Scott really echoed that. And you look out your window and you see these things happening with hotels and all sorts of other areas. Something has gone horribly wrong. Listen, George, I'm going to move on just to get more comments on. You've been great. Thank you for that. Let's get another voice note. This is from Craig in Sheffield.
Ian, can you imagine at the next election whoever gets in? I mean, if these guys have taken it from 22 billion down to 50 billion in a year, in 4 years' time, it's going to be over 100 billion that we owe. And there's going to be some interesting conversation to whoever gets in. God help us if it's Keir Starmer, because he'll be blaming his own government.
Yeah, that's right. Following the current pattern, that is exactly what's likely to happen. Ainsley is down in London. Ainsley, on that issue of council tax, what are your thoughts? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. I still can't work out the correlation between what the value of my house is against the services I get from the council.
Yep.
Why?
Good point.
Yeah.
So because the property market artificially pops up, nothing to do with you, it's not like you've lobbed a loft extension on, then suddenly you are being required to pay more money as a result of that.
Yeah, but I can understand having to pay if I use more services.
Correct.
And have a house full of 6 people.
Yeah.
Poll tax, but there's 2 of us, and we don't use. I don't see what the value of the house means against the services I get.
Yeah, it's a rather extraordinary situation that is really coming to light, isn't it? The what do we get for the money? We said this yesterday. If we were living in this prosperous land, and you could see, you could drive down the road and there were no potholes, and you could book a hospital appointment and there was no big waiting list, and you could get your kid in the right school because there were no challenges in that. If all of those boxes were ticked, you'd go, yeah, I understand why I've got to pay a little bit more, because look, I'm getting loads more. But if you're getting less, it's not just you're getting nothing more, you're getting less.
I totally agree. But I think the poll tax, even though one hated it, was probably the right way to have gone.
Yeah, well, the poll tax was fine. It was just too expensive for individuals. That was the problem. The principle was absolutely fine, that everybody paid their little bit. It's just that everybody was being asked to pay the equivalent individually of what the previous rates were collectively. So, anyway, I get it. Ainsley, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. Laura Jane in Hampshire, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
I'm sorry, but I'm really cross with you.
Go on.
Really cross with you. You had the opportunity to put forward different points of view to that young lady who is completely in crowd cuckoo land.
She loves Labour. She's a supporter. She loves it, Laura.
No, but I know. But what I'm cross with you about.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
We needed to put your point. You needed to really dig down.
Well, that's why you're here. That's the whole point of this show. That's why you're here.
Yeah, but I was sort of shouting at my phone, and I'm walking my
Listen,
dog.
I was never, ever going to get her to tell me there's a problem with channel migration. She was never going to vote to cancel net zero. Ever.
No, and
she campaigned against... She ran against Kemi Badenoch and campaigned in favour of Keir Starmer.
No, but I agree, but that is an example of so many young people who are living in a dreamland, and they seem to be completely... I mean, they come up with anything that is obviously dreamland, and that's what happens when you talk to them about it, and they just don't get the economics of it.
100%. She talked about workers' rights, of 0 hours contracts. That might be great if you had a career planned in Deliveroo or whatever. Maybe you do want some rights. And I understand the short-term or 0 hour contracts for some are tricky. For others, it's their preferable option. I get it. Listen, Laura Jane, thank you very much indeed for that. You get the last word in this hour, but so much more to come in the next one. You don't want to be missing anything. 0344 499 1000. That is where you leave a voice note. You want to leave a message, 87222. Right now, news headlines at 2 o'clock.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome back. So much to get through in this section. We'll chat to Theo Usherwood shortly. First, let me remind you what is on the agenda here. Labour failing young Brits. 60% of young people fearing they won't find good jobs under this current government. Starmer's tax chaos adds to the crisis with warnings of hikes to income tax and soaring unemployment under Labour's mismanagement. And the miserable list goes on at the moment. We'll talk more on that. What advice do you have for Reeves and Rayner? Because Rayner's part of this. She's in the Venn diagram of tax rises as well when it comes to council tax. Also this afternoon, Labour's one-in, one-out migrant deal seems to be falling apart as smugglers exploit weak enforcement and migrants use human rights claims to block deportations, undermining UK border security. Of course, today was the first day of this where they have earmarked some people, apparently, for deportation. The left-wing lawyers are sharpening their quills as we speak. And President Trump might meet President Putin as early as next week as the ceasefire talks progress. Meanwhile, as you will have heard, he's imposing tough tariffs on India and also any foreign semiconductors to boost US manufacturing. Stakes are high, of course, rising once again as Trump pushes for peace and attempts to force Russia to bend. We'll have more detail on that as well. Everything you need to know, and of course we bring you all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. This in from Mark, who says that young lady who thinks that Labour have the younger generation's back is right there the reason voting age should not be lowered to 16. Wait until she sees her tax bill over the next few years. She'll become old and cynical, like me, says Mark. There is a bit of that. One here from John in Harrow. I'm 62, worked all my life. Degree, 40 years experience. I was made redundant 2 years ago. I cannot get work. I've applied for 1,200 jobs so far, and I've had 3 interviews. Man alive. Got 100% in one test, yet still no job offer. I want and need to work. No idea what to do. I mean, that's a crime scene right there, isn't it? And the other thing we don't do very well in this country is if you're 62, you've got a degree and 40 years experience, you should be at the front of the queue, right? Somebody go, wow, this guy, man, look at the guy, he's got 40 years experience. It's exactly what we want. I think age discrimination absolutely is a factor in the jobs market at the moment. And this comes from Ronald in Newcastle. He says, I'd rather Reeves and Mortimer running our economy and our country rather than clowns like Reeves and Rayner. And so it did cross my mind when I said that out loud. Thank you very much for that. Ronnie Wood in Newcastle. Not that one, or maybe it is that one, who knows. Let's get a word on the big stories of the day. Theo Usherwood, the political commentator, is back with us. Afternoon to you, Theo.
Very good afternoon.
Nice to have...
Apologies for the noise in the background. So I'm just down on a farm, having to do some life admin, cleaning out, getting some storage, and it also doubles up. The storage facility also doubles up as an actual farm. So just
indeed, well, that's brilliant. So the fact
I thought you would add to the atmosphere.
It really does. I mean, if some old bullock walked past, it might even make it. You know, it will compound the theme even further. I'll settle for a combine harvester. Who knows?
I tell you what, they're not keen on Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves down in this part of the world.
No, I bet they're not. And it's rather interesting. We spoke to a very enthusiastic young Labour supporter, head of the Students for Labour, I think they were called, and she couldn't see anything they'd really done wrong. But of course we do know that another poll shows 60% of young Brits are not that enthusiastic. They have trouble finding jobs. They're not seeing sunny uplands anytime soon, it seems, Theo.
No, and of course it's not just, don't just look at the poll. I mean, why is this happening?
Yeah.
It's happening because we had a budget last October where the Chancellor put up national insurance contributions for employers by 25 billion. We've got now, and this is from a think tank that was out earlier this week, a £50 billion black hole to fill in the public finances. And that's going to have to come through tax rises because, of course, Labour MPs earlier this summer rejected any notion that there could be any welfare spending cuts. And so businesses, rather than feeling confident and bullish about the year ahead, are very nervous about what's going to come in September in the form of tax rises. And they don't want to take on people because they're worried about the decisions that they are going to have to make in the coming months following another budget. And Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer promised us, Ian, they promised us that there would not be another budget like the one we had last October. It was a once in a Parliament budget, we were told in the aftermath, by putting up taxes to fix the NHS, to give public sector pay rises, to try and stabilise the economy. But it's done anything but, because the problem with this cabinet is they don't have any experience in business. They haven't sat in boardrooms. They don't know what it's like, whether you're running a small business around your kitchen table and you've got 3 employees and you're thinking about taking on a 4th employee, or if you're the CEO of a multinational firm and you're thinking about restructuring your company to take on more workers from right across the economy. And they don't have that experience, and so they don't know, they don't have that insight as what it is to make those decisions. If they did have that insight.
We've just lost your line there, Theo. Visually, you looked fantastic. Vocally, it was sort of alien kind of territory. We will try and get you back and address that. Let me bring some comments in that's coming from you. 87222. Gary says, can I point out to your earlier rather naive young guest that better employment rights are not worth a light unless you have a job. But there is no doubt that the improved employment rights that this Labour government has introduced is causing a weakening of the labour market, with fewer businesses willing to hire staff and more businesses laying off workers. The problem with socialists is that they can't see or won't accept that when you pile on more regulation and costs on businesses, there is a reaction. And that's probably because most of them either work in the public sector or in academia, so they are divorced from the reality of running a business. Absolutely bang on from Gary. It's precisely that. They don't understand that the left-wing thinking is based on a sort of romantic feeling with a romantic feeling and a fictitious relationship with the truth. It's an interesting aspiration. I don't blame anybody for wanting it, and it's fine to say, wouldn't it be great if we could tick all of these boxes? But running this gaff and this country is a balance. Right? We can put more regulation here. But if we put too much regulation, then we end up actually cutting off our nose to spite our proverbial face. And that's exactly what is happening. But the reigners of this world they literally don't see that. They can't see that. I think we've got you back with us, Theo.
I hope the line holds up now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear now. You were sort of cut off by the elements in mid-sentence there as we were discussing the options left for Rachel Reeves.
Yeah.
And I think we definitely have an issue down on the farm with Theo Usherwood. Let's get a voice note instead. This one comes in from Steve.
When you look at every metric possible that you could measure a government against, inflation, GDP, debt, borrowing, how much they're paying out, how much they're wasting, illegal immigration, the list goes on, council taxes have gone up, etc. Literally every key metric is going the wrong way. And I find it absolutely staggering that there are people out there who believe they're doing a good job. It blows my mind.
It blows a lot of our minds as well. Stella says, have a look into all the minimum wage jobs at the moment. The job sites make out they are PAYE. Then once you succeed at interview, they will tell you they're self-employed because they can't afford the national insurance and pension contributions. I'm talking burger vans, care in the community, pubs, those kind of areas. Do some digging and you will see how Labour has made it so that minimum wage workers no longer get holiday and sick pay, as employers are making them go self-employed. It's a scandal the government need challenging on. Yeah, maybe that's the kind of way to circumnavigate the issue of zero-hour contracts. You sort of make it an official self-employed position, and I'm sure you can't do it with, I guess you can't do it with every single job, who knows, but certain jobs you can, so you kind of find a way around it, as it were. Reference the prison guard who took home the keys from Brixton Prison. He didn't get home and go, oh, blimey, I've got my bloody keys with me. 6 days he was at home with the keys. Why aren't those keys air-tagged or something? There is technology that will tell you where the keys are, seriously. Indeed. You can go down the Apple store and buy yourself a little AirTag, and the governor can get on their mobile and go, oh, look, they're around Jim's house. Jim's taking them home, the clumsy old what's-it. I think even the moment they left the prison building, even if it wasn't for 6 days, I think that would have been seen as compromising, and they would have still changed all the locks. Let's talk to Sean in Northampton. Sean, how are you doing?
All right, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good as gold at this end. What are you thinking?
I'm just thinking, listening to the show, or your show and all the shows on Talk Radio, that we're getting to a stage now where I don't think any political party alone can sort out the financial state of this country now. I think as long as it remains party political, everyone's going to be too concerned about their own voting crowd. Basically now, I don't know if you agree, but basically the situation is where they can't tax us anymore. I mean, they're taking money off us left, right and centre. And I feel personally, as a working man, that all I'm going to work for now is to pay those people that don't go to work. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
I literally feel every day I get up and go to work. I've worked all my life since I've been 15 and a half. I'm 66 now. And all I seem to show for it now, I've got I've got a nice little bungalow, worked hard, I've got some good pensions, but I'm paying tax now, so many millions can sit at home and do absolutely nothing. But I don't think either party can solve it on their own, and I really do believe there needs to be a cross-party review now of all the benefit system completely, and to start admitting that we've allowed it to come so out of control that no one party can deal with it.
Is it a... I mean, are we going to have to believe then that seriously we've stumbled across a dilemma in life that is literally beyond the capability of mankind to solve? Because that's what political parties seem to, say, well, we're trying to work at this. Somebody, OK, we'll cut the benefits for that group over there. And they'll go, well, I've got 3 kids and they're flipping starving. What do you want me to do? And those kind of, I know that's the most seductive example, but you take my point.
I think that the point is now what we pay out for in public services. I mean, you mentioned a lot about council tax today. I get nothing. I pay 250 quid a month. I get nothing apart from my bins empty once a fortnight. Now, my neighbours who've never been to work in their life, they get all given to them free. And that's how so many people see that. And I think that the biggest worry for me is we're now living above our means. Basic economics. We're not Great Britain now with an empire that brings in billions and billions of pounds from around the world. We are still, the people that rule us, our government, most of them are all public school educated, they still believe in that crap. He's really got to now say, be like Scandinavia, look after our own country. Let's stop looking after the world. Benefits have got to be cut. It's as simple as that. Why are we paying people that got ADHD? Why are we giving them £400 a month for ADHD? What can you spend that money on for any kid with ADHD? Nothing. Please tell me.
The point about a cross-party kind of... I mean, that all, again, it's one of those notions that sort of on paper you go, well, yeah, that'd be good if they could all sit around a table and go, right, OK, we've got to compromise on some of our ideas here, but all we want to belch out at the other end is a completely reasonable and workable policy. But that never seems to happen. Listen, I'm going to move, Sean. Thank you very much indeed. Great call. Totally get the frustration as well. We're going to be back with Theo in a moment, down on the farm. He's got a response on the other big stories. The first migrants detained for deportation under that deal with France. And the Labour homelessness minister and what she did next. It's utterly staggering. Details coming right up here on Talk.
during my video that you saw where they was dressed up, we discussed consent. We discussed how to choke properly, how to slap properly.
How to choke. See, when you're having conversations about how to choke properly.
But if I'm not doing that, all those people are going to watch online is a video where they've seen a girl get really roughly choked and it's not been discussed at all. So if that guy then does it to another girl who's freshly 18, how is he not going to hurt her? How does she know to speak up? So I am doing good for society, because if I wasn't doing these sex tapes that show more of the educational side, I mean, the parents aren't teaching them.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk. 20 past 2 here on the programme. Theo Usherwood is back with us. He was down on the farm, now he's down in a warehouse. How you doing, Theo?
Well, it's a warehouse, and it's got Wi-Fi on the farm.
Fantastic.
Yes, I'm here.
There's a lot of
activity, everything's going on.
A lot of big wooden crates behind you. Any idea what's inside there?
It's storage.
Oh, it's
I think you know. I moved down here a while back, and then actually easier to be in London. So moving back to London, we needed to put some stuff in storage in the meantime. So
there it is.
That's what we did, and now we're clearing it out.
Make sure you get the right box, because that can end up with all sorts of horrors. Let's talk about the one-in, one-out deal. Of course, today was the day. So it came in on Tuesday, I think, this week. Today was the day that the first migrants were detained for deportation. Now, that doesn't mean to say that as we speak, there are, half a dozen 23-year-old migrants winging their way back to France or anything like that, but it means they've somehow earmarked some. We don't know anything about numbers. There's very little detail on this, Theo.
Yes, and there's a number of problems to this. Firstly, we already know this, they've introduced this scheme, but when you look into the fine print of the treaty that we signed with France, and of course this is off the back of the agreement that Keir Starmer had with Emmanuel Macron during that state visit, his state visit to the UK last month, they can use still human rights legislation to remain in this country if there's a question mark over their age, i.e. they're under 18, and we know that a number of these migrants are throwing their passport, any identity documents, mobile phones over the side of the boats as they come to this country, then they have a right to remain in this country, even if there are strong suspicions, of course, that they are over the age of 18. It's up to us to prove that that is the case and they are not children. And in order for this to be a deterrent, because Keir Starmer has said repeatedly that he wants to smash the gangs, he wants to break their business model, it's necessary for the Home Office and for the government to create a sense of jeopardy that those migrants who are making that crossing to this country from the northern coast of France know that there's a realistic chance that they will be deported back. But if you're only talking about 50 migrants a week actually being deported back, and you're talking about hundreds of migrants each day arriving in this country, especially on calm days when the sea is relatively tranquil in the English Channel, that isn't enough jeopardy. They're willing to take their chances with that, and that's the problem, is that this isn't going to smash the business model of the criminal gangs, organised criminal gangs that are running this route passage from the northern coast of France to this country, and therefore we're going to see, it doesn't matter, but obviously they've detained a few, and the Home Office have press released it and so forth. But actually, what we need to see is the numbers drop significantly, and there's very little chance of that happening.
Well, the UK has 3 months to process the removals. France has up to 28 days to object to the return. So it's still not clear cut. And then, of course, that doesn't account for the fact that a bunch of lawyers might pitch up and go, I'm sorry, my client is, you've got the wrong person, because there's very good reason.
Or they say under Article 3 or Article 8 of the European Convention of Human Rights, then they have a right to a family life in the UK, and they can remain in the UK. There are so many loopholes to this that that whilst the government may be able to run a pilot scheme at 50 a week, what they really want to do, of course, is to expand the scheme so that it's 100 or 200 every week, possibly even higher.
Yeah.
And given the number of loopholes, it's very difficult to see how they're ever going to meet that number going forward. So yes, they can run the pilot scheme and they get the announcement, they have the deal off the back of the state visit and the press release and the red carpet and all the shiny baubles that go with it. But actually the substance, and we're expecting to surpass 50,000 migrants making that crossing this year. We're up at the end of July. We're up 50% on where we were last year. Keir Starmer decided to ditch the Rwanda scheme. So the substance of actually getting the numbers down as a result of this scheme, it's very difficult to see how it's going to work.
Indeed, I think I'm right in saying as well, this scheme was on the table where the Tories were in power, wasn't it? I mean, this isn't an entirely new one. Like nearly all policies, they've been hanging around for years.
And Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary at the time of the scheme was announced, used that fact very effectively to neuter Conservative criticism. Yeah. But it's worth remembering in terms of the political dynamic to this story. The Tories are has-beens. This is a row between Labour and Reform.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Although Chris Philp gets to stand up at the dispatch box and represent Her Majesty's official opposition and criticise this scheme, what really matters is what Nigel Farage says on this particular issue. That's where the political battle is. That's why the Labour government are taking this, are trying to fix this problem. It's not because of the Tories or the Tory failure. The real, political battle in this is between Labour and Reform.
100%. Let's have a look at this extraordinary story from the Labour's homelessness minister, Rashanara Ali. And I mean, we often use that phrase, you couldn't make it up, but I mean, you really couldn't make this up. So it's been discovered that Labour's homeless minister evicted tenants from her property and then raised the rent on the townhouse and rented it out again. A lot of this stuff would not be legal now under the Renters' Rights Bill when it comes in. Tenants faced illegal charges for cleaning and painting, later dropped, by the way, when agencies learned that Ali was a Labour MP. It's interesting, this one, isn't it? Because whatever way you slice it, I don't think the homelessness minister has really covered herself in much glory on this.
I saw the story on social media. It got 1.4 million views. I mean, it's gone viral, and it's another case of a Labour minister's, do as I say, not as I do. And for the seat that Rashanara Ali sits in East London, where she was run incredibly close at the last election by a local candidate standing on a pro-Palestine ticket, she is going to be incredibly vulnerable at the next election again, if she decides, of course, to contest the seat. And of course, we know about, Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana are forming this left-wing party. To go and fall foul in this regard of acting like the quote-unquote right-wing Tory landlords and behaving, that's just fodder for her rival at the next election. And it's very difficult to see if the way this story has landed, how Rashanara Ali, without doing a chicken run to another Labour seat, has any chance of winning back and remaining a Labour MP at the next election, given this story. I mean, I get the obvious right-wing criticism is there, right? It's Labour hypocrisy, but the criticism that's going to matter to Rashanara Ali is going to come from the left. And that's what's going to hurt her and hurt Labour. And we've seen, like I said, the rise of this Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana party. I know they can't pick a name. I know they can't decide a leader. But at some point, they're going to get their act together. 100%. And they're going to organise. And if they can get their act together and can organise, then a seat like Rashanara Ali's is going to be incredibly vulnerable.
And we must mention this as well. At least 50 members of the House of Lords have worked for lobbying firms since 2022, despite MPs being banned from similar roles. Labour peer Lord Wood, who chairs an Economic Affairs Committee, also works as a non-executive director for Bradshaw Advisory. We can understand why people would look at this and say, hang on, this just doesn't pass the sniff test.
No, it doesn't pass the sniff test. But I would say this. there is a problem, particularly with this government, of not listening enough to businesses. If this government had listened to the chief executives of Tesco, of Asda, if this government had listened really, to the cases put forward by the National Farmers Union and to the groups that are there to represent their members' interests and the companies that they represent, then it wouldn't be in the trouble that it's in now. And that if it can be done right and if it can be done above board, then there's a real purpose, there's a real sense in allowing those who know about industry, who know about the sectors in which they work in, to be able to have their say to the government effectively, where they can then influence policy in a way that doesn't damage their businesses and damage their interests. And I think the pendulum, of course, with the Conservatives, we saw the way it went with VIP lanes when it came to COVID. It went too far the other way, right? Yep. The real danger that when the pendulum swings back, that again, you don't see businesses and industry frozen out of those relationships, and it needs to be done properly. And what you shouldn't see, and I will, the Lord's, they shouldn't be profiting. They shouldn't be privately profiting on contracts with advisory firms without declaring their interests in the proper way. But we've got to be really careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater on this. And it's important that businesses have the right channels above board. Everybody can scrutinise them to put forward their cases.
Listen, there it is. We've got to stop there, Theo. Thank you. Theo Usherwood, always great to get you on. We got him on eventually, sitting there in a warehouse somewhere in the UK, who knows where. Political commentator, regular with us on the programme. Back to the question, that issue of the economy and all that's going wrong with it. Paul is in Newport. What have you got for us, Paul? Good afternoon.
Hello, my friend. How you doing?
Good as gold at this end. What's happening?
Right, with the economy, you've only got to look across the water. Right, so Donald, okay, as mad as some people think it is, right, he's trying to get as much manufacturing back into the US as he can. Yeah. And his tariffs all say, right, come back. Because the one thing everyone knows, not just Donald, but anyone who's got any brains about them, if everyone's got a job and everyone's paying taxes and the government's getting corporation tax and all this sort of stuff, the whole thing sort of works. Yeah. Now, I've been on here before, okay, and I related to you, and it's still the case. My business rates have gone up from £23,000 a year to £45,000 a year.
I mean, that is such an insane amount of money.
Right, that's £22,000 a year in. That's almost pretty much one of my employees' money. Shall I lay one off then? Yeah. Should we put another one on the scrapping? You just had a guy on there saying he's applied for 1,000 jobs and hasn't got one.
Yeah.
Right. The small businesses, and I've said it before, we really, really are dropping like flies. What do I do? How do I create an extra £20,000 a year to get? I get nothing from it. No. You think you get nothing from your council?
What are you paying the extra for? I mean, what did your local authority tell you in that when that letter landed on the mat saying, "Oh, by the way, Paul, congratulations on running a successful business, but we are going to up your rates from 23,000 to 45,000." Was that explained in any way? Was there any context given to that?
And years ago, I mean, I've been doing this too long now. Years ago, okay, if I had a query, I could phone up the local valuation office, and a guy would come out, and I'd say, "Hang on, my old friend, what do you think? What gives you the impression that this is worth all this money?" And he'd look around and he'd say, "Okay, then we've got so many square foot, and you got this. You're by a main road, all this sort of malarkey, You try and get hold of anyone from the valuation office now. It's impossible.
Yeah. I would imagine the office doesn't exist. It's probably just been locked up because it's too dangerous to take calls on. Listen, Paul, I have to step in because we're going to move into our next territory. Thank you, Paul in Newport. What a shocking story. Another example of the kind of issues facing working people and small businesses in this country. Interesting debate on the way, by the way, on net zero and renewable energy. Ben Pyle will join us, a regular with us. Also, Paul Dorfman, who's chair of Nuclear Consulting Group. They have very different views on what's going on when it comes to how we look at renewables. Details coming next right here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Lots to get through here. Including this, Scotland approves the UK's largest offshore wind farm. Critics are still warning of the soaring costs to British taxpayers and the, quote, inefficiency of renewable energy in delivering reliable power. Well, two people that know the deal when it comes to wind power join us now. The co-founder of the Climate Debate UK, Ben Pyle, and chair of nuclear consulting group, Paul Dorfman. Afternoon to you both. I know you've had a little bit of a powwow already on social media on this one, and I suppose partly central to the issue, and let's start with you if I can, Paul, is the issue of wind. I mean, on the face of it, wind is free, and what's not to like about free stuff? Is that broadly or part of your contention here?
Yeah, well, I mean, net zero generated about 83 billion for the UK economy last year, growing about 10% per year, nearly about 100,000 jobs. So that, you know, renewables investment is vastly more than any other form of investment. And globally, what was it? About 92% of all new power generation last year was renewables, with nuclear nowhere. So, I mean, the underlying discussion is that basically it seems to be quite a good thing. Now, the question is then, why are our costs rising? What has happened? What's all this about? Well, the short and sweet answer is that basically all our power costs, our electricity generation costs, are dominated by the price of gas. So the price of gas dominates all our power costs. Now, we know that since 2021, since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, our power costs have gone up by about 3 times, let's say. The real problem is that the wholesale cost of power, of UK power, is about 98% dominated by the price of gas.
So there's the problem. Let me put some of this to you, Ben. Ben Pyle, of course, we regularly speak on these kind of issues. I mean, what's not to like? 80-odd% of our energy came from the wind, an industry that generated, the net zero industry, 83 billion quid a year, 100,000 jobs. I mean, surely you're about to cross over to the other side on this, Ben.
I'm a little bit confused about what Paul's argument was. I think he said that there is this huge amount of money that's gone into net zero, and then he started scratching his head about why costs have gone up, and then said it was because of gas and gas-fired generation. I think he's wrong, and I'll try and explain it as simply as I can. We know that the price of with the price of power from gas in June was about 6 pence per kilowatt hour. You can go and look at data from the market provided by green groups, so you don't have to rely on deniers like me who provide that information. We know also that Ed Miliband has just sort of announced the next auction for contracts to deliver offshore wind energy, and he's offering those developers 12 pence per kilowatt hour. He's increased the offer from the previous auction by 11%, I believe, and that auction increased the offer to offshore wind developers by 60%. So we can see for ourselves that at the wholesale market, at the wholesale level, gas is still very significant, even at these high gas prices. Power from gas is much cheaper than from renewable technologies. All of the renewable technologies offer strike prices higher than the price of power from gas in June. So there's a mathematical error here in Paul's claims. Now, it is true, if you look at the wholesale market, that power from gas sets the wholesale price of electricity, but wind farm generators do not get paid wholesale prices.
Okay.
They get paid the strike prices they agreed. And customers do not pay wholesale prices. They pay retail prices. So this is a sleight of hand. It's a flim-flam. It's a look over here, look into my ears, look into my ears. You know, we need to play with straight bats here.
Paul, I could see you sort of itching to get in on some of those comments from Ben. What's your response?
Okay, I mean, let's take an example. You've got a windy day. You've got lots of wind. The wind is producing a huge amount of power, providing cheap energy, electricity to the grid. It's, you know, the wind is, you can't constrain the wind. You don't have to worry about the wind being constrained by the Russians or the rest of it. But there's a bottleneck. And why is there a bottleneck? There's a bottleneck because the grid can't take the amount of power that the wind is generating. In other words, the wind then is asked to constrain, to power down, because basically there's a bottleneck. And the reason for the bottleneck is because of the grid. And it's all about the grid. The grid at the moment cannot take enough of the power that is pushed forward by the wind, basically. So the wind is then asked to constrain. And also it's a question of how far that wind is delivered in terms of the distance between where the wind is generated and where the wind is used. And it's a long, complex discussion, but that's kind of basically how it kind of works.
Okay.
Then what happens then is that the gas powers up and you're paying the price of the gas. And really, if you ask any energy professor, and I'm supposed to be one of these kind of people, there is no question but any energy professor worth their salt will absolutely tell you, without any question, despite what our colleague, who perhaps doesn't have the nous or the academic background, is that any energy professor, and I guarantee you this, any energy professor will tell you that it's the price of gas that is driving up power prices. I mean, it's case closed, end of story.
Ben, it's case closed. End of story.
We could ask Professor Gordon Hughes, or we could ask Professor Dieter Helm of Oxford University, both of them who I think would be closer to my position. That 12 pence per kilowatt hour is more expensive than 6 pence a kilowatt hour. All this talk about grids, doesn't matter if you're the professor of interrupting at the University of talking over people. The fact is 12 pence is more expensive than 6 pence.
12 pence is more expensive than 6, Paul. Basic maths.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. 12 pence is more expensive than 6. The point about all of this is that you're dealing with a complex energy market that moves from day to day, from hour to hour, from week to week. The reality of what we're talking about, and unfortunately our colleague here, who's let's face it, a bit of a climate denier, despite all what we've been hearing about.
You're struggling to answer the point.
No, sorry, pal.
Because the arithmetic.
You said I talked across you. Please don't.
You're just insulting me there. That's all you're doing.
You're talking across me, pal. You're talking across me. So what I'm saying is this, is that basically there is no question but, okay, I mean, it's just simply the case, okay, that we've got renewables, okay, and renewable technology, okay, provided 92.5% of all new power capacity additions last year worldwide, okay? So that's a huge sort of, so why is it that the global market is saying yes to that? If you're so right, why is everybody saying you're wrong?
Ben?
Well, we have things called the Climate Change Act. We have the Renewables Obligation, the Utilities Act 2000. We have net zero. We have the Industrial Emissions Directive before we left the European Union. All of these things closed down the alternatives, the conventional forms of power generation, coal-fired power generation and gas-fired power generation, and indeed nuclear. Your own group is paid by Greenpeace to lobby against nuclear power. which was an economic alternative until green ideology started distorting our energy markets. So the reason that people, it's quite simply that companies are forced into and are drawn into investing in green energy by legislation, not by free choice in a free market.
Okay, the market has given up on nuclear. The market won't touch nuclear with a barge pole. The Financial Times said a couple of days ago that the new nuclear at Sizewell C will cost between 47 and 100 billion pounds.
Mm. Yeah, it's a mess what Greens have done to our energy policy and to our energy markets.
Greens have done to the energy policy, not the Greens have done to the energy policy. Oh, okay, fair enough.
Ben, can you corroborate a little bit more on that? The Greens have...
Well, as I said, I mean, the Greens have been lobbying against Greens of all kinds, both within and without the establishment. Greenpeace in particular has been lobbying against nuclear power for as long as there has been nuclear power, pretty much, or certainly as long as there has been Greenpeace, largely filling the public space with misinformation about the dangers of nuclear power and an attempt to increase the risks. But we're straying from the point here, which is that the green ideology has set the terms of all energy policy, not just nuclear, and not just in relation to coal or oil, also even hydroelectric in some parts of the world. Greens have raised significant objections to that form of power. So you know, I think we've had 25 years of this experiment with environmentalism and with the UK governments of all parties and EU governments and with the UN really trying to push this agenda of sustainable or so-called sustainable, so-called green forms of energy. But all people have to do is go and look at their bank statements or their energy bills going back for the last 25 years, and they will see that they've gone up and up and up. And I would encourage people to compare those against gas prices, because we actually saw a fall in gas prices throughout much of the 2010s, but then electricity prices carried on rising.
Paul, a final response on that.
I worked 10 years with the MOD on decommissioning nuclear submarines. I was secretary of the UK government's under advisory committee on radiation risk. So I'm not kind of rosy-toed about this. It has to be said that every single energy organization, institute worldwide, the UN, everyone says that renewables will do the heavy lifting for net zero. We are in a climate crisis, and we don't necessarily need people who suggest otherwise.
And on that point, listen, Ben, thank you for your time as ever. Ben, co-founder of Climate Debate UK, and also the other voice you heard there, Paul Dorfman, chair of Nuclear Consulting Group, with two differing views on the efficiency of wind power and the associated prices that come with it. Over to you on this one, 0344 499 1000. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
Someone who's got a lot of money in the bank, he's been left millions by his mother. He's got other millions from other various sources. And, you know, he just seems to be playing at it. When he was doing this before he met Meghan, actually, he put a lot of effort into it. And I think he really did care about it. It seems ever since he's gone to Montecito, ever since he flounced out again out of the royal family, and then started throwing bricks back at his own family, it seems that a lot of these things that he's been involved with have gone wrong.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Before we go any further, day 9 of the Voice of Doom. Remember, this voice, I think this is probably the mother of all tricky mystery voices. Whenever we do one of these, you're looking for a politician, past or present. I can firmly say past. You'll hear that from the voice. This is the 8th day. Still no correct answer. All I can tell you is did I say day 8? It's day 9. Day 9 today. So it's gone on for 8 days. Here's the 9th day. And can we put this one to bed? Finally. I can tell you it's not Ian Duncan Smith because that name comes up constantly. But have a listen.
I certainly have things to say.
You've got to go back a bit. I'll give you that clue. But it's a stinker. I mean, I really have, other than throwing an abundance of clues in your direction. I can't imagine anyone instinctively is going to know who this is.
I certainly have things to say.
Can we hear it again?
I certainly have things to say.
Which is odd, because that's all he has to say on that clip. If you think you know, 87222 is the number. If we get a right answer, we reveal all after the headlines at 3. If not, it rolls over. Here it is again.
I certainly have things to say.
And again.
I certainly have things to say.
Oh, go on then.
I certainly have things to say.
I like the way that Sam took a very casual swig of a cup of tea.
I certainly have things to say.
Every time his arm moves upwards, the voice comes out.
I certainly have things to say.
Certainly does. If you think you know who that is, 87222 is where you'll find us. Don't phone, just message, OK? And fingers crossed we'll get a correct answer. Let's go to your calls. This is Phil in Hull. How are you doing, Phil?
Oh, good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon to you. What are your thoughts?
I'm enjoying the show. About the terrible trio. They're just delusional, and unfortunately, and I hate to say this, the liars, they just lie. Whether it's we have stabilised the economy or built 300,000 houses a year or whatever, they just tell lies. If they want some money, scrap net zero. That'll raise some money for you for a start. Don't let Starmer negotiate with anybody. Mauritius, France, you don't let him anywhere near anybody because he manages to do the worst deal as possible.
Correct.
But could you help me, Ian, on one thing, please, about this returns agreement with France, where they decide who comes, we pay, they decide everything.
Yep.
If I'm Abdul from Timbuktu, and I've got a brother in Leicester, and they say, oh, yeah, you qualify. You're perfect bloke to come. And then I say, what about my wife, my 4 kids, the mother-in-law, father-in-law, my husband, my dad, my mum? Does it still count as one?
That's a good point.
The full family.
Well, I tell you what, I bet you the bean counters over there at Westminster would quite like it to count as one.
Yeah, but, I mean, we're going to finish up with more than we send back. Not that, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there's more coming a week than we're going to send back in a year. Yeah. It's just another ridiculous agreement is made. And that Chagos Island still sticks in my craw.
Yeah, that's a bit of a... That's completely inexplicable.
You know, they had all this time. Starmer had 3 years to plan what was coming in. Let the grown-ups in the room. Well, if these are the grown-ups, can we have some kids back, please?
You think so? That's right, because the grown-ups have let us down badly.
Anything.
I love it.
We've got a business secretary who's never run anything. Nobody's run anything.
Yep.
You get somebody from the Treasury gets interviewed on LBC saying about this new bridge. You don't know where it starts, where it finishes, how much it costs. I think she said, it'll be millions. Well, and she's in the Treasury.
Yeah, I mean, you got, again, the file of things you really cannot invent is almost bursting at the moment. Great point, Phil. I love the incredulity. Phil in Hull. Earlier on, somebody sent us a message called Ronnie Wood, and I said, is it the Ronnie Wood? Anyway, Ronnie's got back in touch and said, yeah, it's my real name. I'm named after my grandfather. And by chance, I actually have the middle name David, which actually is Ronnie Wood of the Rolling Stones' middle name as well. My late father was called Roy Wood. He was the fella from Wizard, isn't he? I wish it could be Christmas every... That's him, isn't it? His great-grandfather was Frank Sinatra. I just added that bit at the end. Who knows? I like it. Ronald, thank you, sir, for clarifying that. Jill in Cornwall. How's your windmill doing, Jill? Good afternoon.
Oh, gosh, don't talk to me about wind machines.
Have you not got one in your back garden?
Almost did. Almost had one. I went to see a property when we were looking to move to Cornwall, and at the bottom of the garden of this property was this huge, well, they are huge machines.
Wow. I was only jesting when I mentioned that, but you've literally looked at a property with a windmill in it.
But the thing was, and what the person said to us, and we heard, the noise is unbearable. It's constant 24 hours a day, and it gets louder with the wind.
You don't think about that when you see them in the distance, do you? You don't really consider that this thing is not... It's not got a silencer attached to it.
No, and what irritates me more than anything is that we're supposed to tolerate these things, but if the wind picks up, if it gets a bit windy, they turn the darn things off anyway.
Yeah, you can't have... It's too much wind, which I always seems a bit odd, really. Too much energy.
So what is the point? You know, I mean, what is the point? If it can't cope with an increase in the wind, then...
The point is, Jill, we're saving the world. That's the point.
Well, why do we not take advantage of the fact that we have the sea around us, the water around us, and use water? You know, I mean,
tidal power, yeah, hydrogen power.
I mean, that seems to be more sensible than having these huge, great, ugly things that are so noisy you can't live with them, and just use what is available rather than building stuff that is...
Yeah, which we mostly have to import with a huge carbon footprint from China as well. They've got almost the solar panel contract sewn up, as well as far as I can see, Jill, and windmills as well. Listen, Jill, another great call. Thank you very much. This is Damien in Manchester. On the issue we began with about what is happening to our world and our economy. Damien, what have you got for us?
I'd just like to make a point about that young lady who phoned. Sorry, you did an interview with, the Labour supporter.
Yes, Issy Waite.
Yes. The one thing, I was in the car at that moment, and the one thing that I got into my head was the fact of what happens when the unemployment reaches record highs like it was in the 80s. I mean, luckily I was only born in 1984, so... but it's like, what's if the employment gets to that level and the youth unemployment? And I know record amount of people who are struggling to get into work or struggling to get a job or anything like that. So it's like, what do they have to do? And to answer the question, what should Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner do? Just retire, get lost.
Yeah.
It's just. I mean, I didn't vote Labour. I voted Reform, but I'm going to vote again Reform again. So. It's, but what can you do, really?
What can you do? Well, Reform are going to do very, very well based on, if nothing else, that we've tried all the other alternatives.
Yes.
We've given it a go, and nothing seems to be really working. There is a real thirst and an appetite for radical reform, no pussyfooting around with daft initiatives and vain projects that are costing collectively billions of quid. Just common sense, and that's, I think, what most people are crying out for, right?
Yes, that's that. I totally agree with you with that.
Fair point. I'd like to finish on that point, Damien. Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to finish on that point. That's Damien in Manchester. I didn't know what I was saying there. Damien in Manchester on unemployment and Labour. Dean says Dorfman was waffling, even with his notes in front of him. Ben Pyle was knowledgeable, unscripted and persuasive. It's the whole green pie in the sky versus the real-world pragmatism contrast. In a nutshell, Dorfman displayed an arrogance and rudeness typical of the self-anointed visionary. Total turn-off. Well done, Mr. Pyle. And, of course, Mr. Pyle, Ben, was accused of essentially being unqualified to talk on this, whereas Mr. Dorfman, I like the fact we're using those kind of Mr. Like it was 1910. Mr. Dorfman said, I'm a qualified man, top of the tree in this sphere. If you heard that debate, your response, 0344 499 1000. Are we feeling confident on the Voice of Doom? Are we about to get a winner on one of the most difficult mystery voices we've ever had? Let's remind you of the voice.
I certainly have things to say.
87222 if you think you know. Hopefully we can tell you in a couple of moments after the news headlines right now at 3 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Pretty packed out last hour, I can tell you that much. Loads going on. We are continuing to talk about Labour failing young people, 60% fearing that they're never going to get a job, and, you know, the job tax bites, and the rest we know. Starmer's chaos adds to the crisis with warnings of hikes to come. Soaring unemployment under this, the mismanagement of this government, which is in a new kind of, not so much a new postcode, but a new stratosphere of incompetence. We'll watch with interest, and we're taking your calls. Reasonable question. What advice do you have for Reeves and Rayner, the arch duo of tax rises to come? Because it won't be income tax, VAT or national insurance. Oh no. But where is it going to land? Also, Labour's one-in, one-out migrant deal with France is collapsing as smugglers exploit weak enforcement and migrants use human rights to claims to block deportations. Today, of course, was the first day they have identified some of those migrants to be deported. But what happens next? France has to okay it, the UK has 3 months to get it right, and the lawyers are already writing their invoices. And Sean Keach from The Sun joins us again for another tech roundup, looking at people getting banned from WhatsApp and some new tech you might be able to get for absolutely nothing. Free tech? Seriously? We got the details on the way. Everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk. And hopefully we're going to be speaking to our friend Paul Champlin, who regularly helps us out with landlord issues, on the Labour minister, the homelessness minister, who's been caught evicting tenants and then raising the rents. She said she's done nothing wrong, went by the rule book. It's a terrible look, though, right? Before we do all of that, let's just tie up the voice of doom, the most infuriating mystery voice feature on any radio show in the United Kingdom. It's specifically a politician you're always looking for. This is the voice.
I certainly have things to say.
Despite that, somebody's guessed David Hamilton, the TV presenter, who's not a politician. Tony Blair, no, clearly it's not Tony Blair. Jim Callaghan, Richard Hammond, the Top Gear presenter, also not a politician. Douglas Murray, not a politician. Francis Pym, David Davis, John Gummer, no. Alan Clark, no. Lord Peter Walker, no. But then somebody guessed David Gauke. There it is, David Gauke. Not the right answer, by the way, but it's a new guess. Nobody did identify correctly this voice.
I certainly have things to say.
Which means it returns for day 10 tomorrow at about 2:45. Now, Donald Trump's envoy has met President Putin for 3 hours of chats as ceasefire talks progressed, with a potential meeting between Trump and Putin on the table. Tensions rise, of course. At the moment, Trump imposing 25% tariffs on India for Russian oil imports, while Putin focuses on annexed regions and considers an aerial ceasefire. Goodness me, this is a complex issue. But is the fog about to clear? Let's speak with Lisa Hesseldine, who is the assistant online editor at The Spectator, who's written specifically on this piece today. Lisa, nice to have you with us. It's never straightforward. You do wonder whether there's is there sort of inbuilt choreography with these things that sort of has to happen. You send an envoy over and then one side says, oh, we might meet, and the other side says, well, I'm open to a chat, but it's got to be on my turn. And they do all of this stuff, and then probably next week they'll sit down and have a sandwich together.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me on.
Pleasure.
And yes, as you say, there is a degree of choreography to these things, as kind of almost with any negotiation, whether a trade deal or in this case of negotiations to end a quite big conflict. A lot of the work, a lot of the sort of the behind the scenes nitty gritty work will be worked out by lower level officials that will be kind of making those advances to each other, saying, is this acceptable, is this not? Of course, in this particular case, what is unique is the fact that we're dealing with two leaders who have incredibly big and also decently fragile egos, both of whom basically are saying that the only other person they're going to speak to is Trump or Putin, that they don't really want to speak to anybody else, which is also why we've seen the fact that they want to cut out European leaders, they want to cut Zelensky out of the conversation. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a unique situation, but there's definitely an element of song and dance to this. The fact that Trump has been sending Witkoff over to meet, and also that there have been Russian delegations going to the States in the past. And
of course, Trump said, as Trump does, great program, beautiful meeting, the very best, the absolutely beautiful, beautiful meeting. What does that mean in reality? So he suggests that great progress has been made. I mean, can we authenticate that? Is there any way of knowing if that's going to lead to a meet-up next week?
At this point, it's hard to say because, as you rightly point out, Trump likes to talk in hyperbole. He always likes to put a positive spin on things, particularly where he's sort of been directly involved in orchestrating meetings or deals or that sort of thing. So it is hard to say. Also, in this case, the Kremlin haven't actually been briefing all that much, particularly after yesterday when Witkoff met with Putin. The Kremlin actually said, one of their officials said, we will not be briefing media until Witkoff's had the chance to debrief Trump. So at this stage, I think we can probably say that there will be a meeting that will take place next week. When that will happen, also where that will happen, and really in what format exactly, I think is too early to say.
It's interesting when you are that kind of prominent and your egos are that big, and one could reasonably argue that you need to have a big ego to be in those kind of jobs. I mean, these guys don't. If one insults the other doesn't. They're not bothered by that. Almost, it's kind of just part of the territory. It's almost like a boxing match in many respects. It's just expected that you're going to throw a few blows every now and again. I mean, the day before Trump sticks a whacking big tariff onto India because of their purchase of Russian oil, and you don't hear Putin go, "Oh well, now that's happened. We've got nothing to." They don't blink at that kind of stuff. They just seem to let it wash off them.
Yeah, you are right to say it. There's an element of expectation that they are going to be trading blows, and of course, sort of relations between the US and Russia overall have been far from good over the last few years. So yeah, that is to be expected. I think what we have noticed though is that particularly Trump has been at great pains to flatter Putin in the rhetoric that he's been using around sort of talking about how talks are progressing. He's been directing a lot of his frustration and anger at Zelensky. Also, for example, I think the fact that he's directing sanctions at India as well over buying Russian oil is another example of how he's essentially been deflecting the frustration and anger that he's feeling at the fact that this conflict is still ongoing. And I think basically Trump seems to think that really the best way to get Putin to the table is to flatter him, is to kind of play up to his ego on that front, which may or may not work. We'll have to see.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting how Trump can just sort of pull the tariff thing out the bag. I mean, if this was over here, there'd be about 19 months of meetings before they came up with a tariff number, whereas Trump just goes, I think he's got a dartboard in the Oval Office where, look, we've got 25% on this one. I mean, it's his, I think he described it a little while back as the most beautiful word in the English language.
Yes, he did. It's an amazingly powerful tool, and I think the fact that he's threatening to use added sort of secondary sanctions, as he calls them, on countries such as India and potentially China or other countries that are buying Russian oil is would massively influence the funding that Russia has available to power its war machine. I do think we need to urge a note of caution, though, in that even though Trump has said that he's going to bring in these India tariffs, they don't technically kick in for another 3 weeks or so. So we'll have to see what happens with this meeting with Putin next week. We've seen earlier in the summer how Trump sort of was talking big on introducing tariffs and that sort of thing, and indeed sanctions on Russia earlier, and then has kicked the can down the road a little bit. So, yeah, we still need to sort of see it to believe it.
And in other news connected to Trump and tariffs, he's announced 100% tariffs on foreign-made semiconductors. I noticed lots of journalists talking about semiconductors without any of them actually explaining what one is, what it might do. Clearly, it's an area that electrical appliances and cars will have a say in. Tell us a bit more about that, because this is fairly significant stuff.
Yeah, so the tariffs on semiconductors, again, is going to have a massive impact on a lot of the industries that, a lot of global industries that, as you say, for example, semiconductors in cars, that are really quite big industries. So the European car manufacturing industry, the British car manufacturing industry are going to be really affected by this. Europe, in particular, hasn't done so well at carving out a space themselves in this deal with the US that they've been trying to get on a trade front. I think also, frankly, over here in Britain, the government hasn't necessarily pulled all the levers it could do to get us the best deal possible. So Trump, of course, is trying to bring manufacturing back into the States. There is also the question, of course, that these tariffs that are being put on are actually going to be paid by American consumers. So it's going to be painful, I think, on a lot of fronts, both from the consumer perspective domestically for Trump, but also for those industries.
It's interesting that, Trump's bluster and his kind of, what some would say is sort of cack-handed approach, and critics would say an irresponsible way that he conducts himself. For others, that straight talking does sometimes pay off. And I'm just sort of reminded really of his comments. And I think J.D. Vance made a lot of noise about this, Apple iPhones, why are they not made in America? Why do you not make iPhones in America? It's crazy. Well, there's a good reason, because they would cost probably 3 times as much if you made the whole thing. But Apple do seem to have reached some kind of compromise on this. So they are going to build a little bit of the iPhone over in Kentucky.
Yes, that's right. And I think I think that's really quite big, and it shows exactly the power that Trump has as president and is willing to use, not least because obviously to get an enormous sort of company like Apple to even shift a fraction of their production back domestically shows. I think Trump will quite reasonably then use as an example, say, well, if an enormous company like Apple can do it, why can't other companies do it? Of course, Apple has the resources to do this in a way that perhaps smaller companies don't. But yeah. I think this may well be the first in quite a few, in a larger movement and a sort of a realignment that we'll see in global industry more broadly.
We will watch with interest. Lisa, thank you. Lisa Haseldine, who is the assistant and online editor of The Spectator. Thank you for your time. That's been great. I forgot to tell you this, Finn, actually. J.D. Vance is coming round the corner from me this weekend. He's staying with David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary. His official residence is in Sevenoaks. And so Vance will be there. Now, when Boris Johnson was the Foreign Secretary, using that same place, Boris was sometimes seen in the local pub. I'm going to have to nip in for a pint, aren't I? The idea of seeing J.D. Vance having a swift Guinness down there in the bricks is going to be, that will be extraordinary. We will watch with interest and see what happens. Charlie is in, talking of Sevenoaks, Charlie is in Sevenoaks. How are you doing, Charlie?
I'm okay, thanks, Ian. How are you?
Yeah, good as gold, thanks. What are your thoughts? Immigration.
Immigration, yeah. More to do with the migrant crossings itself. There's an interesting story in the Mail today, and it says that 10 of the EU countries are increasing border controls.
Yes.
So, I don't know whether you've seen it or not. But
yeah, I mean, I know they've been ramping it up. Germany, of all places, that had this crazy open border policy, apparently are getting rather strict on things.
Yeah, I'm just intrigued as to whether is that going to be something in the future that maybe will deter crossings because they're getting stopped earlier on.
Yes, if you stopped before you even get to the north of France.
Or at least putting off some sort of deterrent. And if so, are Labour going to claim
victory for it? That's a very good point. That's a really good point. So if a lot of migrants who are coming in from North Africa making that trip across the Med into southern Italy and places like that, or into Spain, they might be thinking, right, I'm not going to do that anymore because the 6 countries I would have gone through, which I could have done quite easily, are now really clamping down. And then at the other end, as you rightly say, Charlie, Keir Starmer going, look, I did it, when he didn't do anything at all.
It sort of makes sense, doesn't it, when you think about it? I mean, it may be a long way off, and it'll take a while to filter through, but why is it taking those countries to get to the point where they're thinking enough is enough?
Yeah.
As far as terrorism goes as well, obviously.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
And, is that where we're going to end up? With them not solving the problem, but reducing the problem.
Indeed. We will see.
Listen. Just a comment. Yeah, I just wanted to... It was just interesting to see that story.
Absolutely. It's a great point as well. No one's really raised that, Charlie. Thank you for that. Charlie, down there in Sevenoaks. Let's just have a moment to dwell on that story of the Labour Minister for Homelessness who threw tenants out and then hiked the rent by £700 a month. This is ahead of a law change which would ban all of this, apparently. Paul Champlina is the founder of Landlord Action, regularly helps us out on these kind of stories. I keep using that phrase, Paul, you couldn't make it up, but I mean, this one is absolutely bullseye on that. In fact, we haven't got Paul with us at the moment. We will get with him.
Yep.
You're with us, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Hiya.
Hello, Paul.
How are you? Sorry, you caught me on the hop. I'm here.
Did I really? Oh, you're there. I can hear you loud and clear now. Glad you're there. And I was saying this comes under that category of you couldn't make it up. The Labour Homelessness Minister
I know,
found to have kicked out the tenants and then hiked the rent.
It's total hypocrisy. It's mental. So she would have served most probably a Section 21 notice, which is what they're trying to ban, obviously. Whether she tried to use that, of using the eviction of serving Section 21 before the ban, because obviously serving notice and putting the rent up won't be allowed in the new world.
True.
But yeah, you couldn't write it up. It's mental. I mean, look, there's 355,000 people, homeless people, that are looking obviously for accommodation. But she's clearly, I mean, the property went up, I think, for about 850 grand. It was in East London.
Yeah.
But she, the tenants that got evicted, they found out after that the rent was put up to 4 grand a month from £3,300 a month. And she's used it for personal gain.
And also, the other thing, as I understand this, Paul, that I think her claim is that she evicted the tenants because, you know, it wasn't like in the middle of the night. She kicked them out and threw a suitcase out the window. But nonetheless, they were evicted because she wanted to sell the property, and then the property didn't sell. So she put it back on the market, but with a higher rent. Now, as I understand it, the new Renters' Rights Bill would make that very manoeuvre illegal to do that.
It would do. So in the new rules, you wouldn't be technically... I think it's going to come in April next year, but what will happen is you can't use a 2-month notice to evict called a Section 21, which clearly she's done.
Yeah.
What would happen is she would have to serve a notice, and the tenant would have had to live in the property for about a year before she could try and evict the tenant, giving a 4-month notice, and then look at trying to resell the property. Dare I say it, I think that there will be landlords that will try it on inevitably when the new world comes about. But yeah, she's quite clearly looked to evict the tenants, put the rent up, and then re-let and gone again. But it's astonishing because she's actually the homeless minister.
That's the point of this
You couldn't
story,
make it up. Ian.
You really couldn't. Listen, great to have you on, Paul, as ever. Paul Champlina, founder of Landlord Action. And there it is, Rushanara Ali, the Labour MP and homelessness minister, who's meant to be right across this kind of stuff. And it looks like, some might unkindly say she couldn't give 2 figs about what the deal was, other than the fact she managed to hike the rent up and get more cash for what she was renting out. And that will be the new rules that come in. And I don't dispute, by the way, just for clarity, that the tenants that were evicted knew they were going to be evicted, and that was not really the point of the controversy here, although that would be an issue to when the new rules do come in, whether it's next year or earlier. But the bit about sticking it back on the market with a hiked up rent, that would definitely get flagged, and that could get you fined thousands under the new regulation if it goes through as it's currently proposed. Because if you even if you legitimately, and this is the crazy bit of that legislation, if you legitimately said to your tenants, I'm going to sell the house, and so therefore, I'm giving you, you can give 6 months notice. That's fine. Everybody's in agreement with that. And you put the house up for sale and it doesn't sell. You can't then just rent it out again, like when you feel like it. There's going to be a time limitation on that. So you think, well, hang on a second. The house did sell, but the sale fell through. So what am I meant to do? Keep it empty for 2 months? Yes, that's part of the rule. So you don't do what some people are suggesting the homelessness minister did. 0344 499 1000.
been alerting the solar farm developers, Mike, who want to desecrate hundreds and hundreds of square miles of our glorious British countryside and farmland with these revolting solar panels. Yeah. And I've made it very clear to them that there's no mandate for this whatsoever. In Lincolnshire alone, just get this, there are plans for about 100 square miles of solar farms. Some villages are going to be completely and utterly surrounded.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Just having a slight Kevin O'Sullivan moment, lobbing in my headphones. There we go, we're back on it. Loads of comment coming in from you. Pete in Lincolnshire. If anybody arrives illegally from France without documents, we must assume they must be French and send them back within 24 hours to France. That would not be a bad assumption, would it? You've come from France, we have no documentation, we have to assume you are therefore French. One from Anne in Archway, who says, our farmers used watermills and windmills for hundreds of years before electricity. None needed, truly green, and I grew up around them. Glenn in Colchester, just a quick point on this one in, one out rubbish. I can picture the scene already. The very first person selected will appeal and argue in front of a judge that he's been selected unfairly, victimised and treated differently to every other illegal that has come the same way. There is no way a judge can rule against it. It's a good point, actually, isn't it? Well, they would reasonably argue, yeah, why me? Why have I been selected? I've come from the same place as all the others. Why me? Fair point. Let's go to Matt in Cheshire. What have you got for us, Matt? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Good afternoon.
It was about the question of the day, Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner. If they were both men, they'd be getting multiples, much more savaged than they are being. Both of them, to me, appear like they're more interested in how the hair looks in photographs than... Rachel Reeves has had more makeovers in the last year than anybody in living memory, I think.
Yeah. Do you remember the day she got very upset in the House of Commons, and she might have had some personal stuff, so I won't dwell on her predicament, but she looked like Stalin's granddaughter. And then the very next day, she looked like Elle Macpherson. I thought, what the hell happened there? She was smiling and grinning like the proverbial.
Yeah, because they think they can dupe us every time into thinking, oh, she's back on her feet again. She's a strong character.
Yeah.
Imagine a footballer that's not kicked a ball for 14 years and made no
training,
training whatsoever in that period. Then steps out into a Premier League match and immediately pulls the hamstring after about 3 minutes. Angela Rayner is next door to me, and Jonathan Reynolds is my MP. These people are con men. Yeah. They had no idea what they were going to do. The only reason they're in politics is power for power's sake, for photo opportunities, hobnobbing. They're actually worse than the Tories because they deny that they do all these things, but they actually do it more than the Tories.
Yeah.
At least the Tories have some idea what it is like to run a country, even though they were appalling at doing it.
Yeah. I mean, they never used to be appalling, did they? There was a time when they kind of knew what they were doing. It was a light touch, smaller state, less regulation. But then, of course, over the years, the whole Blair thing happened and he grew the state and Brown loved all of that and David Cameron embraced it. And we've never been the same since, really.
I think Cameron said he was Blair's successor. I think Blair said he was going to be like Thatcher. So basically all we've had is like more diluted Thatchers for 13 years.
It's strange. I mean, I don't dispute the world changes and things that you can do one decade, you might not have the same relevance, decades to come. And artificial intelligence is probably going to be the biggest game changer and challenge for any government on the planet. And we've hardly even touched the sides on that one yet. So I know things change, but this idea that we live in this strange labyrinthine world, Matt, of, crazy decisions and HMRC running anti-British seminars for their staff. I mean, this stuff is the kind of thing that you couldn't really put in the thick of it and get away with it.
Well, I know you like to dismiss conspiracy theories, but every year that passes, insane people who trot out mental-sounding things are becoming more and more relevant. And the idea that there isn't some all-encompassing strategy to destroy the West since COVID, it looks like a complete load of nonsense now, because everything we see more or less proves that that's the truth in Britain and America.
You're right. I mean, America now are kind of getting onto it a little more. But when you consider, you had Kamala Harris that was previously arguing that the American taxpayer should fund sex changes for people in jail. Now, when you have someone who thinks that, and they wanted to be the president of and therefore the biggest figure in the free world, you have to scratch your head a bit, don't you, and say, hang on a sec, you believe that? You think that's okay? And then you look at HMRC with its, it's just one example, the HMRC with its anti-British seminar for its staff. I mean, do you think, really? What was it? We had an asexual conference over there at the NHS for staff who were asexual so that they can showcase their kind of embrace the differences between individuals. Marks and Spencers and the bra person, the trans woman who approached a 14-year-old girl, and I'm sure was being very helpful, but nonetheless, M&S still have, you can use whatever changing room you like. Just say who you think you are, and you can come on in. I mean, this is beyond bonkers, right?
If you check out the guy that Ramdani is running for mayor in New York.
Oh, that fella.
Self-confessed communist.
Yeah.
If he gets in the world's the biggest financial city in the world, and surely again we have to think there are people at play within all Western nations, amongst all institutions, that are there with the sole purpose of bringing down our nations. It's pointless discussing it. It's happening. And the main parties in our countries that care about the general public and the British people have to start telling the public that they're going to do something about it.
Yeah, spot on. Matt, thank you very much as ever. Great call, Matt in Cheshire. We'll talk to Tony shortly. Don't go away, Tony in Lancashire. Lines are open, 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk tech in a couple of moments' time. As ever, on a Thursday, around about this time, Sean Keach, Head of Technology and Science at The Sun, is going to be with us in a few moments. It's 3:30. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This comes from Ian, who says Mrs. Ali and her government, this is the homelessness minister's position, should not be a landlord in the first place, let alone what she's done. This proves that Labour is not much of a Labour party and makes me giggle when some of your callers call them communists. Fair point. Kick out tenants and hike up rent, so much for the nice party, eh, says John. And Colin says, as a young man, one of my best enthralling and mesmerising works of fiction I've ever read was authored by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, The Communist Manifesto. Then I grew up and reality took over from fantasy. I bought The Communist Manifesto when I was about 25 and I thought, I'm going to read this. Somebody said to me that if you want to know anything about politics and be across it, you must read The Communist Manifesto and Mein Kampf. And I bought the two of them. Not that they're equivalencies in that respect, but it does show extremities in political thought. And I purchased both and still own both and haven't read either. I did actually read a little bit of The Communist Manifesto, but I kind of lost the plot when I realised it wasn't, it wasn't a serious book. It was a comedy, but that's another story. Sean Keach is with us for a more sobering conversation. Sean, of course, is Head of Technology and Science over there at The Sun. Afternoon to you.
It's nice to see you. I'm more of a Lord of the Rings guy, I think.
You see, I tried Lord of the Sam through there is a Lord of the Rings man. He could read that with his eyes closed.
That's brilliant. I try to read it every year.
You go back to it?
Oh, always, always. There's so much more that you notice every single time.
Yeah, my brother-in-law is massively into it, and I gave it a go. And I don't know what it is about fantasy and that genre, but considering I quite like Stephen King as a writer, and if you think, he also writes, he strays into that territory a bit, but all of his stuff is, about a haunted car or a haunted dog or a pet cemetery that comes alive, and so it's equally as bizarre in terms of what you're being asked to do with your mind. But for some reason, I can't get my head around it.
I think I would have liked to have been a wizard in another life, but instead I've gone with technology, which is, a magic in its own way.
Did you read Harry Potter as an adult?
Oh, no, I read it as a kid.
Oh, right.
I read it as a kid and I loved it. It's great.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. I'm reading her Robert Galbraith stuff.
Interesting.
Her other penned name as an author. Yeah. But the Potter films I've watched about 38,000 times.
I'm slightly nervous about the TV series, I'm going to be honest, because the thing that I'm worried about is what they're going to do with the music. Are they going to re-record the music? Are they going to create new music? I feel like the Harry Potter tune is so iconic. And I don't know, it's stressing me out a little bit. What are they going to do with it? I
think Stacey Solomon's doing it. That's what I heard, singing the theme tune. Might have made that up. Sam is here to talk technology and all manner of issues around the world of science and tech. Let's start with WhatsApp. Are they banning people from WhatsApp? What's going on?
There's been a massive ban wave. They've banned 6.8 million people from WhatsApp in the first 6 months of this year.
Wow.
So now it's not regular people that are being banned, so don't panic, don't check your WhatsApp or you can't get texts. This is scammers and specifically people linked to scam centres. So they've basically exposed a bunch of these massive scam centres in Southeast Asia that are setting up all of these various scams. So sometimes it's like fake jobs, or sometimes it's when they're posing as your family, or sometimes it's, like all of these things on TikTok for us and you can earn money, and always it's just a way to try and get money from you. And it starts off innocent and then suddenly descends into something where you've transferred £1,000 and you'll never see it again.
They're funny, aren't they? I got one the other day, oddly, and it said something like, we've been looking at your CV. That's another one that comes through, and he's like, well, I haven't got a CV. I can't think of the last. I wrote a CV last time when I was about 16 and had nothing to put on it, clearly. But that clearly is going to lead, if I followed it up, I'm sure it leads to something where someone's going to ask me to part with money.
Usually they move you off to another app, and then that's when they start working on you. They'll try and flog you all of these investments. And I think part of the problem is, every time you speak to someone about WhatsApp scams, they'll say, it could never be me, I'll never fall for it. But people are falling for it. People are losing millions of pounds a year, especially to the hi mum, it's me one, which is where you get a text that is pretending to be from your son or daughter, or sometimes it's your mum or your dad, and they're saying, I've lost my phone, I'm texting from a friend's phone, I need money urgently, can you transfer me £200 so I can get home, I'm stuck somewhere. And people send the money, and you just in the moment, you just don't think about it.
But it comes from So what does it come from a different number?
So it'll come from a different
I've lost
number.
my phone.
So
This
like,
is my friend's phone.
Yeah, texting from my friend's phone.
Yeah.
And I need money to get home. I'm in a panic. And, you know, sometimes it won't work because you're, you know, say you're with your daughter or son. But if you're not, that is causing people to send money to these scammers. I mean, it's working, and people think it won't get them, but it is working.
It does.
You panic.
Did you ever read that book, Freakonomics, which was, you know, clearly about kind of looking at these weird, odd. Well, it delved into all sorts of territory about sort of statistics and how things work. And one of them was, why does the Nigerian prince email still get sent? And the answer, very simply, was because it still works. Because it only has to. They know when they send out saying, you know, hi, I'm a Nigerian prince, or I'm someone who's been, you know, come into money or whatever. They know that of the 20 million they send, 19.9 million know what it is. They know that. But they only want half a dozen who don't know. And then a fortune.
Yeah, and this is big business. There are huge scam centres, and often it's, you know, in Southeast Asia, and it's often forced labour where it's being ran by people who have had their passports taken away. So it's not necessarily always, you know, the person who might be scamming you might be a victim themselves, which I don't necessarily think will make you feel better about being scammed.
No.
But, you know, this is serious organised crime, and you're right, they're doing it because it is making money. People are falling for these scams, and you've just got to be super vigilant. I think if someone is offering you an investment or a job and it seems too good to be true, you've just got to slow down and pause. And really, the best way to get around the "Hi Mum, it's me" scam is to set up a passphrase with your family. Could be anything. Could be like purple carrot or red chair. And if you ever get a text from someone in your family asking for money, say what's the passphrase, because the scammer won't know it, but you will. Or just call them on the phone.
I was going to say, call them back, just to double check. But it does work on the basis that a certain amount of people won't. And if they get you at the right moment, it's like back in the day, you know, I say back in the day, in the early part of this century, you know, when people would come home from the pub and there'd be a thing saying, you know, HMRC or PayPal, you've overpaid and you're due. It was always a random number, like you're due sort of, you know, £68.50, and you'd think, oh, that's good. It doesn't sound too ridiculous. You overpay. You think, okay, just log into your PayPal account and bingo, you've lost all your money. But of course, the fact that it was sent to you at 10:30 on a Friday night fed into the fact that as many people came home. Because I remember saying to a group of mates once in the pub, no one's going to fall for that. And one bloke went, I did. Well, how? Why? He went, because I'd had too many beers and I came home and somebody said they owed me money. So I immediately joined in with it. So they just take a punt on numbers, don't they? Statistically, out of all the millions of scams you send, you only need 0.1% of people to respond, and you've done all right.
And one of the ways they're getting people is adding them to group chats. And so you enter this group chat, and, you know, there's hundreds of other people in there, and so it can then start to seem like a good idea. So WhatsApp has rolled out this new feature that warns you when you get invited to a group chat that, you know, it's not someone that is a contact, and there's no contacts in there, and there's no one that you know in that group chat, and it gives you that alert, and hopefully will give you that pause before you start getting sucked in by these videos and promises of money. And often they'll use pictures of attractive women to hook people in, and it's, you know, it's very sinister. But you've just got to, you know, the advice with scams is always just slow down, be careful, think about it, don't send money to strangers. It seems obvious, but people do it.
What else? I was reading one of, I think there was a fella that appears on the morning TV somewhere this week that he'd, you know, fallen for the, I can't quite remember what the scam was, but it was to do with his bank account basically, and they then gave him the real number of the, you know, and they said, look, if you doubt that we're real, just call this number, and then hang up, and you know, we'll call you back. So he rang the number, which was genuinely Barclays Bank or something, and then put the phone down. Then they rang him straight back. Now that takes a bit of guesswork on behalf of the scammer, but again, they do it 5,000 times. So he rang and he thought, oh yeah, that is the number. But even though he didn't, nothing really happened there other than the psychology of him thinking, yep, they're the real people. And then, of course, he handed over 15 grand or whatever it was.
There's a really nefarious one where, and you often see this on like Facebook Marketplace, where someone's trying to sell you something or offer you a really good deal, and they'll say, can you just send me this code that you're going to get to verify that you're a real person? And you send them the code, and actually they're just trying to log into your WhatsApp. And so you send them the code, and you're sending them the code to get into your WhatsApp, and then they can do the "Hi Mum, it's me" scam as you with your own phone number. So if anyone ever asks you to send a code that's going to come through text, Never do it. Completely ignore it, because it's always just them trying to break into your WhatsApp.
So it's a special code that will get once they've got your number.
Yeah. So you know when you try and log into WhatsApp or other services, you'll get that verification code. It's usually 6 digits. That's what they're trying to get. And so they're pretending that this code is just to verify that you're a real person, but they're asking you to send your own WhatsApp login code to them so they can steal your account, pose as you, and then ask your mum or dad or aunt or cousin for a load of money. And, you know, carry out more scams, maybe steal their WhatsApp account. So this is how it spreads. And then suddenly, you know, they're making loads of money.
A lot of dodge pots out there, to be honest, Sean, aren't there?
It's hard. It's hard to keep up.
It's hard to keep up.
Everyone's trying to get your money, and you know, how much money do we have?
But there are some things you can get for free, courtesy of Apple in a strange kind of way. What's happening here?
So Apple is handing out a free upgrade for cars, which sounds great, and it is pretty great, actually. So in September, there's going to be a big iPhone update. You're thinking, well, how does that link to your car? But your infotainment screen in your car runs off your iPhone if you're using Apple CarPlay, and lots of cars have Apple CarPlay. That's getting a big upgrade. It's going to look shiny and new. They've got loads of new designs. It's this like new liquid glass look. It looks really good. I've been trying it out. It's very beautiful. And they've changed it, so in a way it's like a safety feature, because currently if you're sitting in your car with CarPlay and someone calls you, it replaces the map. The thing pops up, and then, you know, if you're on a roundabout and then suddenly someone calls you, you can't see where you're going, you can't see what exit.
It changes.
So that's going away. They're getting rid of that. They're adding live activities. So say you're picking someone up from the airport, you'll be able to see a flight tracker on the screen as well, so you can just follow along, or sports scores, which is, you know, if the sports fans out there, they'll be able to keep up on Man U or whatever's going on, so you'll be able to see that, and you can have widgets on the screen now, which is quite nice. So
how do you get your free screen?
So the way to do it, currently you either have to wait until September to get it, when it will come for free, or you can sign up for the beta, which is basically like an experimental version of it. So if you go to beta.apple.com and sign up, just sign in with your Apple ID, sign up for the beta, then next time you go and get into your car, it'll pop up with the new version. You can try it early, impress all your mates.
I love that.
Yes, it's brilliant. And it'll look new, it'll look shiny, and it doesn't cost you a penny.
On that issue of free stuff, there's more free stuff coming from Disney.
Oh, absolutely. So Disney Plus has teamed up with Uber, which is a slightly odd pairing, but it's Uber's special subscription service called Uber One, which gets you free deliveries if you pay $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. And so basically they've bundled Disney Plus into it. So if you buy the annual subscription, you get free Disney Plus for a year. Normally it's £9 a month, but you get the version of the subscription with no ads, which is a really good win. Or if you pay for the monthly Uber One plan, you'll get 6 months of Disney Plus with ads. So either way, you know, whether you do it monthly or if you do it yearly, you're going to get something free. Disney Plus, lovely. It's great for summer as well, you know, it's loads of kids' movies on there.
There are loads of kids' movies. It's really strange. I'm still psychologically slightly at odds with the idea that Disney is a thing, a channel in itself. So when somebody says, oh, I saw this great psychological thriller, you know, where this fella goes on a serial killing spree. Oh, where can I watch that? It's on Disney. It just sounds a little odd. Have you seen a show called The Bear?
Yes.
Which is great.
Although I only watched 2 episodes of it, and I'm really bad at finishing TV shows, so I'm like halfway through loads of TV shows.
Okay, let me revise that slightly. I'm 5 episodes in. This is on Disney, which is what made me think about it, which has an awful lot of swearing and, you know, hardly Dumbo and Jungle Book, which is what your mind associates with Disney. And it's a tricky one. It's a sort of a hard watch, and it's got a sort of a Sopranos-y feel to it.
I thought it was he was very grumpy, and I don't know, I think after a long day when I get home from work, do I want to watch a grumpy man being grumpy on TV for an hour?
Yeah, there's a lot of very, very unhappy, angry people in it.
I need Dumbo. I need Jungle Book, some peaceful shows to watch. A bit of Moana.
Comes with nothing wrong with that. Comes with a trigger warning now, Dumbo.
Does it?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And I think Jungle Book does as well.
Still nice and peaceful. Though.
Sort of old stereotypes and things that are in there.
Yeah. I mean, if you go deep into the back catalogue of Disney, there's a lot of dark stuff in there.
There is a lot of dark stuff in there, yeah. Which at the time when you first saw it, you didn't really see that. But through the prism of the contemporary world.
It's even sometimes if you just go back and watch some episodes of Friends, some of the jokes you're like, oh, that's a bit risky now.
Well, didn't they? I think Friends, they also stuck a bit of a warning on, didn't they? So there's a bit of a revival of Friends, and so a new generation got to see it, and many couldn't believe that there would be a joke about that. 2 blokes joking that their friend was gay.
Yeah.
not because they were trying to make any homophobic remark, just like, you know, you're gay or whatever. A lot of the younger audiences saw it. They couldn't. It wasn't that they were offended. They couldn't work out where the humour was in it. They just couldn't see why that might have ever been a joke.
There might be a trigger warning on this in 20 years' time. We've said something we didn't realise was dangerous. Maybe Disney Plus will be controversial then. Who knows?
Bit of a gay thing to say, that, wasn't it, really? Listen, Sean, great to have you on with us.
Thanks for having me.
We will speak to you next week. He is, of course, Sean Keach, and officially the head of technology and science over there at The Sun. Great to have Sean on. Back with the calls from you coming next on Talk.
And there are so many cases of people that we have tried to extradite who have made groundless appeals time and time again. And so many activist immigration judges have come down with ridiculous rulings. We all know the chicken nuggets one. And there's a whole litany of other stupid decisions whereby they will not deport people who absolutely should not be here.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Brad in Cambridge has referenced scams. With all the warnings over the years, I have no sympathy for the scam victims. Nature's natural selection, as far as I'm concerned. It does feel like that. The only thing I would say is every time somebody gets scammed, they go, I was one of the people that said I have no sympathy for people who get scammed. Because, I think it's just about hitting the sweet note at that point. Now, the scammer doesn't know that they've hit the sweet note. So they send out 10 million emails or they make 10 million calls to people saying, we're your bank, you've been compromised, you need to change your bank account. And of course, all of them will get ignored, apart from one person who at that very moment is absolutely knackered. They've come in from work. They've just by coincidence, and again, the scammer doesn't know this, the statistical chances are what they rely on. That very week, they had something strange go on with their bank card or their credit card. They thought, oh, that's a bit weird, I'll keep my eye on that. And then they get a call from the bank. Oh, it all ties in. And it's that kind of thing. So they catch you at the wrong time, but with the correct circumstances. Again, they're only guessing, but they know that if they fire 10 million missiles, one of them's going to hit. And I think that's how it kind of works. But broadly, I'm with Brad on that one. Back to your calls. Tony in Lancashire. What have you got for us, Tony?
Good evening, Ian. Thanks for taking my call, by the way.
It's a pleasure. What are your thoughts?
Right, about these illegals, right? There's one in, one out. What a lot of baloney it is. Right? How about none in and about 5 million out, right? And secondly, right, how many illegals have died in that channel now, would you say?
Well, too many.
Right, too many. Right, well, on France's land, why is France not stopping them or searching them? Is it France? I think it's France's fault, if you know what I mean, for letting them go and down channel. Like, it feels like we're getting a blame. over here. When
Yeah.
When it's France. So why does nobody talk about it? That's what I want to know.
It's a fair point. I mean, I do think that, I remember speaking to some very senior fella in the Home Office a few years ago, and he made that point. He said, look, despite what people think, we actually work on this 24/7. We've got such a team trying to get this thing sorted. He said, but the sticking point is the French. And he made that really clear. And he wasn't making a cheap point or some sort of obvious, blame game thing. He genuinely said the problem we come back to time and time again is the French. Tony, I've got to move on because we're nearly out of time. You've been amazing. Thank you for that. Quick message from Steve in Beckenham. He said, I'm a massive fan of Lord of the Rings. The first time I read it, I could not believe anyone could write a book this amazing. I'm very steeped in politics and real life stuff, but this just gives you a chance to forget real life problems and disappear into a fantasy world. Maybe I need to give it a go again. David is in Buckinghamshire. David, on scams, what have you got for us?
Oh, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon.
I'd just like to publicise that there is a scam going around at the moment, which is done via SMS, which purports to come from Her Majesty's government, His Majesty's government, regarding winter fuel payments.
Okay.
And it's an out-and-out scam.
So so it's timely. So people think, okay, they've just revised the winter fuel payments, and we'll be in winter within a couple of months. So psychologically, it kind of chimes.
Yeah, exactly.
And then one assumes at some point they ask for further details, which includes your bank account.
The text message makes it absolutely clear that they want financial details to facilitate the payment.
Oddly, Finn, our producer, got this very message just the other day.
It's around at the moment.
I've got it written here in front of me. Department for Work and Pensions official reminder. According to DP records, you've not yet submitted your application for winter fuel allowance. To ensure you receive your £300, please complete your application before 30th of July 2025. Failure to submit by the deadline will render you ineligible for the stipend. Please take action now and complete your application on the link below. It looks like gov.co.uk, and then I won't read the rest of it, but it looks like a link that could be official. And then it says, please reply why, then exit this message and open it again and activate the link.
Yeah, that's the one. Except mine said 7th of August. You need to reply by 7th of August. So what it's doing, it's trying to get you to rush to apply.
Yes. And they've got it all sorted, haven't they?
On the topic of scammers,
yes,
the biggest scammer you've had on this show this afternoon was the academic who was trying to tell us that it's the price of gas that is leading to expensive electricity prices. And the simple proof of it is, what are the electricity prices in the USA? And they're they're about 25% of ours, and they have a much higher proportion of gas-generated and oil-generated electricity than we have.
There it is on that point. David, thank you very much indeed. By the way, previous caller Tony, I think it was, in Lancashire, asked how many people had died in the Channel between 2018 and 2025. 152 people. That's still a fairly shocking number, isn't it, have died on that journey. I'm surprised it isn't more, given how utterly dangerous and stupid. I mean, we can, whatever the illegalities of that level of immigration are, no one will see anybody die. 152 people. Just before we hand over, let's get a voice note. This is from Peter.
Just testing how to do a voice note. Please ignore this.
Just testing how to do a voice note. Please ignore this, it says. Okay, thank you very much, Peter.
Was that from me? Was that the one I sent in? So I was trying to show someone how to do it. It's like, he just said, oh, I don't really know how to do it. So I said, right, just this is how you do it. And I said, please ignore it. I wouldn't expect you to play it on air. So,
it was the best voice note we've had all afternoon.
Really? Okay.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Profound thoughts.
I know that there was a subtext to what you were saying.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, please
Hidden
ignore
depths.
this. Yeah.
Yes.
There was an underpinning sort of narrative from a political perspective.
Always.
That I thought was really good. Students of media should dissect that going forward.
Someone who's a bit deep is sometimes different depending on which generation you speak to. I think my generation is, you think deep thinker, whereas previous generations you think a bit of a thicko. So so there we go.
Big show this afternoon, Peter.
Yeah, lots to talk about. The government doesn't seem to know how the one in, one out migration scheme works, even though it shouldn't even be called one in, one out. It should be 17 in, one out. Also, the Labour Minister for Homelessness throwing out tenants and then hiked rent by £700 a month. I used to advise the government on homelessness, and that is hypocrisy, if ever it existed. Also, the former Superman, Dean Cain. I don't remember Dean Cain.
I remember Dean Cain, yeah.
He's joined ICE to save America. He's joined
so he's become an immigration officer,
he's become
basically.
well, he's done a little
but he should be brilliant, shouldn't he? Because, I mean, he can really make stuff happen. You know,
yes,
he can fly
over. Yeah, exactly, yeah. You'd be a good Lex Luthor, actually. You'd be
you think so?
Yeah, you're too much hair to be Lex Luthor, but nonetheless.
Maybe.
We'll talk about prisons in panic, the problems there as well. We'll get a look at the sport, the chaos at the BBC, another presenter, two other presenters under investigation as well. And will the Conservatives now consider compulsory digital ID cards? We'll be talking about that. Loads more to discuss with
there's a suggestion that there is a female, high-profile female presenter who shared a willy photograph.
An explicit picture, yeah, exactly.
But we don't know who that person is.
No. I think the Sun knows, but they're not telling us, probably for legal reasons, because it would be severely defamatory. But nonetheless, we'll get all the info on that throughout the programme.